Military families have incredible stories of perseverance while navigating frequent moves, deployments, food insecurity, transitioning out of the military, and more. This is the place for them to share those stories, highlighting unique experiences of military families. Welcome to the Professional Dependent Podcast.
Anyway, all right. So this episode of Professional Dependa, I got my guy Toby. So, dude, that is. I'm so glad you redid the flex because that most muscular pose is great with the anabolic
It looked
lighting.
it looked better over there, dude.
It
I'm
was a
telling you,
little better, but it's not bad there.
because the light is like here,
The
and so I'm off
indirect,
center. I
yeah,
was up underneath the light before, so
it was like at least 90% anabolic with that lighting, 100%.
yeah, yeah. We lost a little bit to the fade, but that's fine.
It's okay. That's all right. So Toby, how you doing this evening, man? Got your cigar going? You're good to go.
Yeah, not bad.
Right on. All right, so I told you we talk a little bit about the token dude stuff. So where y'all stationed now? Y'all are Florida,
Uh, yeah, we're in Tampa,
right on.
McDill Air Force Base.
Okay, so your wife is. I didn't know which branch your wife was in. She's Air Force or she Army.
She's Army.
Okay, right on.
That's
That's right,
why.
because
That's why we're so. That's why we're so uncomfortable here. We're used to a different crowd, you know.
a little bit more rough around the edges.
Yeah. So I think most
Oh,
people around here would consider us abrasive.
I prefer it like more to the point, like
I
not
mean,
as.
I think it just depends. Everybody has their own culture. Everywhere has their own
Mhm.
culture. I mean, you and I have worked varying places that we talked about off air, and each one of those places we've talked about, I'm sure each one, even though it's a very similar in what we did, it was still a different culture from place to
Yeah,
place.
for
And I
sure.
think the military is very similar, especially since coming from what she does for a living and what she has done, and then
Hmm.
coming to a place where, quite frankly, a lot of people aren't being, they're not out there seeing combat,
Right.
firsthand, that kind of thing. There's just a different culture. And then what I did for a living and the stuff that I've seen, it's just different. It's not bad, so it's not a
Right.
knock on anybody around here. It's just you kind of get used to having a certain type of sense of humor, a
Hmm.
certain interaction, that type of thing, and then you kind of have to adjust to sort of a different. You living where we live now, I can definitely see where like all the jokes come from.
Right.
Like because there is a different culture,
Oh yeah.
among them, and so I'm now seeing that firsthand. I did a little bit when I was a kid. I was
Hmm.
an Army brat, and so we would kind of have some different people that would come, and some Air Force people that would come live on the base, and so you kind of see that difference. But now being here, just sort of immersed in it as an adult, I
Right.
can really see the difference now. Like I said, disclaimer: it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's a difference.
Right. Well, it's like we were saying earlier. Like everybody's got their own mission, and obviously the Army's mission is you kind of have to have that abrasive, straight to the point attitude because that's kind of the Army's mission. Whereas the Air Force, their mission is just a little bit different. So it is what it is. But the main thing we were going to talk about, besides like the token dude stuff, was you spent a lot of time in the fitness world. You're personal trainer, for lack of a better term. What would you consider yourself?
I the problem now is that like before COVID or right around COVID, all of a sudden everybody was a personal trainer,
Yeah.
because in the it's not a knock to anybody who's done it. I have two certifications through
Hmm.
different governing bodies. Um, and they teach you just enough to get people hurt. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's just like anything. The
Hmm.
basics, the most basic information is a starting point.
Yeah.
So if you go to college for something, that's a starting point. That's
Hmm.
not the final, you know what I mean? You're going to take that knowledge and that's your base. And now you're going to continue to build upon that. And it's the same way. Most of what I've learned through trial and error with my own
Hmm.
clients, seminars. I pay for, I'm one of you see these people that are like, who's paying 200 to $300 to listen to somebody talk for 8 hours?
Yeah.
Me and because these are world class strength coaches, so
Hmm.
I don't feel comfortable calling myself a strength and conditioning coach because I don't have a degree, right? So I feel like even though there's plenty of people that are strength and conditioning coaches
Hmm.
that don't have a degree. I mean, look at Louis Simmons. Louis Simmons didn't have a freaking college degree, and he could coach circles around any of these people.
Yeah.
As it pertained to his world. And
Right.
look at him; he ventured out into other things, other sports. So I just personally, I don't want to take anything away from someone who has put in that time, put in
Right.
those 4, 5, 6 years to obtain that title. So I try to respect that, but I like to tell people I'm like a strength coach, strength trainer. I coach people.
Yeah.
So that's what I do. I don't like the term personal trainer because, again, I don't want to get lumped in with these people who they don't. You and I have talked about it a few times. They don't understand programming. They just everything's 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps.
Right.
Okay, well, why are we doing 3 sets? Why aren't you doing 2 sets? Do your warm ups, hit a feeder, and then one top all out set, and then maybe a back off or something like that. So, but people don't understand why they're doing what they're doing. They just see somebody else doing it and they copy, they regurgitate that. And for somebody who's untrained, you could do everything wrong and still gain muscle. We know that. If you're a newbie, you're going to see results if you do everything wrong.
Those newbie gains, that false confidence builder.
Yeah, I mean, you're like, dude, I'm adding 5 pounds to my bench or my squat or whatever every week, and then it hits you, and then you go from, man, the first year I started lifting, my bench went from 115 to 225. Okay, well now it might take you 3 or 4 years to get to 315. If you're lucky, if you ever get to 315.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and this is where the programming comes in. This is where all this other stuff comes in. So, yeah, I say all that to say I try to shy away from being called a personal trainer because I hate being lumped in with that crowd. But yeah, I coach people, I train people. There you go.
And you train people in a variety of different things too, because I've seen you've got some guys that are bodybuilders, you've got some like some general fitness guys. You've got a pretty broad cross section that you train.
I tell you, the easiest clients are women, hands down, the women. And I think it's because, in my experience, there's not an ego.
Yeah.
Right. As long as they're seeing some sort of a progress along the way, they're like, okay, like I'm I understand, because it seems like it's a lot easier for them to push that sort of away. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I could say, hey, I'm glad that you hit that weight. Your form looks a little, let's dump off that weight. Let's work on the technique, or let's work on controlling it. Let's do this. Let's do that. And they're more apt to listen. Whereas, as men, we want to, I got to get stronger. I want to chase the number. I mean, I'm guilty of it too. I might squeeze out an extra rep or two with some not so great form just so I can say that I did it. Like you're doing a bench press and, the first 6, 7 reps, you're doing it correctly. And then all of a sudden you're using mostly triceps and, you're kind of, you know what I mean? So, but with the female clients, once they kind of figure out what they're doing, once they feel that sort of target muscle or the target muscle groups stop working the way they're supposed to, that's it.
Yeah.
And that is technical failure, because now your technique is gone.
Right.
And so it's a lot easier to coach them than a bunch of ego dudes, like, no, I gotta get stronger. My bench press.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you, because I know whenever my wife deploys, it never fails. She'll deploy and then she'll ask me to start doing her programming for her, and I can program her whatever, and she's going to do it because she's like, I don't have to think about it. You programmed it. It's working. And it's like,
that's
cool.
The thing. As long as there's some sort of a steady progress for most, it's okay. Now the problem comes with the biggest problem I see usually comes in the form of weight loss. Because, as you know, if you start lifting, or you could just lift light weights, as soon as you start really pushing it and lifting heavy, your body, even if you've been lifting for a while, your body's going to adapt to that. You've never done that before. So your muscle mass is going to start to shoot up, even though your body fat might be going down because you're sort of recomping. Your scale might not move, or it might even jump up a little bit.
Yeah.
Or it might creep slowly, or it might kind of bounce a little bit, depending upon salt intake and all these other things.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's where I see the biggest problems. I see less issues with the men than I do with the women. That's just an observation,
Yeah, that's where those progress pictures really come in handy. And I know some people don't like doing that, but it makes life so much easier because
it is so hard to explain. It's so hard to get some people to understand, because I don't want to say it's not just, of course, but it's everybody. But it's like, I've got pictures. I was dieting for the first part of the year, and then I took some pictures somewhere around, I think, like the end of July, and then I took some pictures at the beginning. So between July and October,
Mm-hmm.
I had regained up to the weight that I started at the beginning of the year,
Mm-hmm.
and then I started to drop back down. So the two pictures were at the same body weight, but you can
Mm-hmm.
tell a world of difference. And I've been lifting for close to 10 years.
Right.
So that's why I tell people, there's a rebound effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like a lot of people, you get addicted to that. You diet for so long, and you might
Yep.
have experienced it. You diet for so long, and so you're used to training, not necessarily in a depleted state, but you don't have a surplus.
Right.
As soon as you start reintroducing those calories, or you're bumping those
Oh, yeah.
calories back up, all of a sudden your strength, like you're putting 5 pounds on everything every week
You feel
for like a
invincible.
month, month and a
Yeah.
half. And then of course, then it catches up. But
Yep.
that's where most of, a lot of people I've seen, that's where a lot of them get a lot of um, their strength and size gains, is that first month or two after kind of a longer diet.
Yeah.
That rebound is real.
Well, that's why powerlifters like to joke about we're always bulking.
Hmm.
Because you just constantly, if you're constantly staying in a surplus, you always have extra calories to help fuel you.
Well, I competed.
Actually, I don't. I'm not gonna lie to you. I don't know a lot about your past when it comes to weightlifting. I know a little
So
bit, but
when I first got into lifting, I realized a long time ago, don't kid yourself. I'm looking at let me look at this right here. I'm looking at my picture, and trust, I look a lot better than I got the down lighting, and everything's good, and I just ate ice cream. So I got the freaking, the glycogen and blah, 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 blah,
right.
blah. I do not have the genetics to be a good bodybuilder. I can look good.
Right.
Right. I do like the way that I look. And I finally, for the first time in many years, because I battled through body dysmorphia horribly. I went from very skinny. I took Ritalin when I was a kid because I have ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't even think you're allowed to prescribe that anymore. I think
it's
you
gone
can't take
away.
that, because it's basically just like, the shit that Hitler took, the fucking meth.
It's all methamphetamine.
Yeah. So, and so I didn't want to eat. And then
Right.
when my mother finally realized, she was like, man, like, I do not like this. So I came off of it. Appetite, I'm just eating
Right.
everything, and so I became a chubby guy. So I've been made fun of for being too skinny, and then I got made fun of for being fat, and then I got really into exercise, and I started wrestling and track and all stuff. So then I got skinny again, so then I got made fun of again for being skinny. And so yeah, I've been all over the place. But yeah, so when I first I got to a certain point where I got sick of being skinny, because I was pretty thin, and not like unhealthy skinny, but I was like, at the time I was 5'11".
Okay.
I'm 5'10" now. As you know, as we get older, we shrink a little bit. Plus, I've been in a car wreck. I have degenerative disc disease, so I've lost an inch. So I'm about 5'10" now. But I was 5'11". I was like, on average, maybe 150 pounds.
Okay.
So I was very thin, not like nasty looking thin,
Right.
but like that's a skinny dude.
Like wiry,
and I got,
because you sound like you were pretty like you were into sports and stuff. So
even after I got out of high school, I was running, 2 times a week. I was doing body weight, full body workouts, 3 times a week. And it was just 30-40 minutes. And I would do like, a circuit of like push-ups, dips, pull-ups if I could do them, air squats, lunges, sit-ups, just like the basic stuff to try to target as much as I could. And then just for general fitness, I just want, for healthy. And then eventually one of my buddies, who was really heavy in lifting, I said, man, I just want to get bigger. So I started going with him. I got into lifting, fell in love with it. And I realized early on, I did not have, like, I was like, oh, I'm watching bodybuilding and I'm doing all this stuff. And then you kind of have to be honest with yourself. And I'm like, I can't eat that much.
Right.
And
you were never going to be the next Jay Cutler, is what you're saying.
I was never even going to step on a stage, man. I mean, I think maybe if I tried to now, because as you know, once we get up into our 30s, that's prime muscle time. Our strength surges, muscle maturity. That's why you could take a bodybuilder, 2 of them, almost identical physiques. One of them be early 20s, one of them be in their mid 30s. The mid 30s guy will always look better. It's just muscle maturity.
Yeah, the muscle's fuller. They've had more time to develop it.
So, and you just have a different look.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, I realized that, and I was like, well, I was working nights. And so on my off days, I would keep the same schedule because it's hell trying to,
Yes.
like be awake during normal time and then try to work it. I was like, I'm just going to be awake at night. And so I started watching a lot of podcasts. And back then there was a podcast. I'm not trying, I don't want to plug it, but like it was Mark Bell's Powercast. So if you're from that era, so
you can plug Mark Bell all you want. The dude knows his stuff.
Well, anyway,
I mean, he's been around. He's seen a lot of different things. So
no, Mark Bell probably knows. I'm sure. I'm not as what he shifted when he was doing was mostly the powerlifting stuff. I was into it, and then as time progressed, I kind of some of the stuff I don't really follow. So nothing against. I'm not bad mouthing anybody, of course. It's just I just disagree with a lot of the things that he does. It's not for me. So if it works for someone else, it works for someone else. But I started getting into that. I started looking at the powerlifting. I'm like, damn, you know what? Like there was one thing that not only him, a bunch of people have said, but like, we all possess the ability to get stronger. You may not have the genetics to look the prettiest or the whatever, aesthetics and with the shoulders and this and that and this and that, but we can all try to get stronger.
Yeah.
And so that kind of spoke to me, and it was like, man, so that made me thinking. And so there was a gym, a local gym, and every now and then they would do local meets, not sanctioned. It's not like USPL or USPA or anything like that. But it was like they'd do some unsanctioned stuff. So I went to one time I knew somebody and he knew some. He's like, hey man, why don't you try this? It's like a $10 entry fee, and then they have like if you win, you get like some gift cards or what I mean. It was just like a little thing to kind of more of a gym promotion. So the first one I went to, there's almost 30 dudes, so it was a decent amount.
That's pretty good meat.
And most of the guys were like me, they just dudes who kind of were lifting and they just wanted to check it out. So I don't even remember what it was, dude. I weighed like 155 pounds or something, and I was just like, my bench press was terrible. My fucking, like I think I benched like 200 pounds or something, like, and then I think I squatted like 290. I can't even remember, dude. It was just, I was just like, it wasn't even like, you tell them what your attempts are, you know what I mean? Like, this is what I want. This is my first, this is my second, this is my, you know what I mean? You just called, you're like, what do you want? It's your turn. You're like, 315. They just put 4 plates on there. Nothing was calibrated. It was just gym shit, knock around equipment. But I did it and I really enjoyed it because as I'm doing it, everybody's like, yeah, come on, man.
Yeah.
Go. And I'm like, yeah, I like that energy, because even though you're technically competing against these people, they wanted you to do your best.
Yes.
And so I was like, this is awesome. So I decided they were going to have another one like 9 months later, a year later, or something like that. They were telling me about it. And so I decided to train for it. I didn't know anything about programming, man.
Right.
I just basically was like what they call like a Western periodization, a linear periodization.
Yep.
I just started with some high volume and just went and tapered down, and it worked. I got on that when I went to do that. It was like, I weighed like 100. I want to say it was like 161 pounds.
Okay.
And my my squat was 445.
Nice.
My deadlift was 500. And my bench I tell everybody it was 300, but it was really 298. So I'm like, let me get that 2 pounds, and it's not even, that's what I tell people. It's like, it wasn't even sanctioned anyway. Just give me that 2 pounds, I could have done it. And by the way, I could not have done it. Yeah, that was,
all you, bro.
When you're like benching and like you go up and there's like a thing where like your body tries to recruit random muscles. And like, I had like this weird, like external rotation. And I was like basically benching like this, like, but dude, I freaking my butt and my back were on it, and I freaking get it up, and the bar was crooked as shit. And the guy were like, all right, rack. And they freaking pulled it back, and I look, and the guy's like, and I'm like, okay,
I'll take it.
Cool. Cause hey, my back, my ass, my feet, everything was touching, my head was touching the bench, everything was good. So, but yeah, the squat was the one that I kind of pulled out of my ass. And I've never squatted that much since, because I very shortly after that I got into a car wreck. So,
well, I mean, you throw a 500-pound deadlift on top of that at 160. That's a solid deadlift.
Hold on, let's put the asterisk. Sumo.
You know what?
It was sumo.
I don't care. It's still 500, and
Oh, at 161 pounds, I was very proud of it.
you should be,
And
because
I did it, and the guy that was judging,
uh-huh.
I wish I remembered his name. He, because they only had one guy, and he was kind of, he was kind of everything. Like for the deadlift, he was in front,
Yeah,
and in the squat and the bench, he was kind of, so he
off to
could
the side a
see,
little bit.
yeah, so he could see everything,
Right.
and he could see that, so like I said, it wasn't, those numbers were not like, I wasn't on some like platform, well, there was a platform, but I wasn't on like, I didn't have three judges and I didn't have lights, and it was
Yeah.
just a dude going, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
yes or no.
100%.
And, but, so that was, and so he comes up to me, during, in between, um, I want to say it was in between before the deadlift,
Okay.
because, squat, bench, deadlift.
Yep.
So we did the squat, did the bench, and he comes up to me and he goes, "Hey, you're the one that squatted at 445." And I was like, "Yes, sir." And he goes, "How much did you weigh?" And I said, I want to say I was like 161 pounds. And he goes,
It's nuts, dude.
"That's crazy." And I was like, "Is it, man? There's guys out there that are," he goes, "Yeah, well, you're the guys you're talking about are, yeah, of course they're leagues above."
Right.
And he goes, "Are you on anything?" And I was like,
it's a fair question.
I was like, "Steroids?" Because I didn't know much
Right.
back then, And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, "No." And he was like, he goes, "You need to stick with it." He said, "I'll tell you what." He said, "I am." He said, "There's a sanction meet, um, coming up, and it was I think it was a USAPL meet,
Okay.
I want to say." And he said, "There's a sanction meet, and it's coming up." He said, you should enter that." And I was like, "Okay." And I want to say it was like 7 or 8 months out. And so I was like, "Okay, cool. I'm going to do that." And then like, I think like maybe 3 or 4 months later is when I got into my car wreck, and that was it. And, for the first time since then, that was like 2017, beginning of 2017, I think. For the first time since then, last year, I squatted like, it was either 405 or 410. And I have not been able to, because I keep re-injuring my back. I just can't.
Yeah.
I can't handle that anymore. So,
Well, and you lift straight up raw too, like, because I never see you with a belt or anything. You're always just straight raw dogging it.
no, for a multitude of reasons, when I would use the belt, I noticed that I would definitely use it as a handicap. I would just
Okay.
press against that, which of course is what you're supposed to do. But I also noticed that I don't want to say I was taking shortcuts because I wasn't injuring myself, but I did notice that I didn't feel like I had to work as much in my midsection.
Right.
And it could just be, all in my head or whatever, but I decided I just want to do it without a belt. Okay. So yeah, tracking back, for the deadlift and that squat, I did use a belt.
Okay.
So I was wearing a belt when I did those lifts. But nowadays I don't use a belt for a multitude of reasons, but part of it is because I'm too lazy to take it on and off. But I like to do that, and I'd rather these days I try to keep the weight lower as far as the squats. Because obviously I'm doing some sort of a bench. I mean, I got safety pins. If it doesn't move, I just tink and roll it up and slide out from under it. But except like 2 or 3 months ago, where I didn't set the pins on an incline bench and I dumped 245 into my lap. That hurt a lot.
That does not feel good.
No, that hurt.
Yeah.
So.
No, but I dig unsanctioned meets because they're a great way to introduce people to the sport.
That's what got me. Yeah.
That's what got me. We were in Alaska, and I've been in the gym since high school, just working out, never really have any set goal, like kind of like what you were talking about, like lifting to stay healthy, to do the things I was doing. I used to do triathlon, so I was lifting but with more of a
whatever your goal is, that 2 or 3 months, I want to have a better bench, or I want to focus on my squat or whatever.
Yeah. So then a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, I'm doing a powerlifting meet. You want to do it?" And I was like, "How much does it cost?" He's like, "It's free." Cool. Where is it?
Whatever.
At the base gym. I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, they had one. They had one at the base gym here. I was going to enter it in. I was going to do it, but there's so much that I want to do now but I
Right.
also think about longevity.
Hmm.
Um, he says as he smokes tobacco, but um, oh, I mean, I quit smoking and all that stuff a while
Hmm.
back. I don't drink that much these days. But I wanted to do it, and I just thought about it. If I'm going to do it, I'm going all out.
Right.
It's one of those PRER kind of joke, whatever. But that's
Hmm.
when if I'm going to do that, I want to do it. And plus, if I'm surrounded by a bunch of people, I don't want to look like a punk, right?
Well,
And
that
and
atmosphere.
knowing it about myself, you know, my back having degenerative disc disease and all the other issues that I have going on. I hope this isn't too loud. There's a helicopter flying
No,
overhead,
you're fine.
um, but just understanding how I am and
Hmm.
always chasing those numbers, I decided not to do it. I figured it was a better idea for me not to do it. I had thought about just doing just maybe doing like the bench only, but
Yeah. Hmm.
the bench has always been my worst because when I was wrestling, my right shoulder, which is one of the reasons why my right shoulder is a little bit bigger than my left one.
Hmm.
Um, when I wrestled in high school, I got my shoulder dislocated.
Mm.
Once that happens, that just sets a trend for shoulder. That's just
Yep.
shoulder injuries, and that's what happened. Just a series of shoulder injuries. So even if you watch me bench nowadays, as it starts to fatigue, that shoulder is not as stable. And I've
You
done
kind of.
all the this,
Yeah.
I've done all this, and doing my back. Trust me,
Hmm.
man, I can row all kinds of weight, but and my back's very strong, but it's just that shoulder has never been the
Hmm.
same. And so no, like when I start to get fatigued, as I come up, it'll start to lag a little bit. And
Yeah.
then of course what happens is this kind of,
Get that
you know what I
rotation
mean? So
going.
there's a little bit of that. And then I have to, so you'll see a lot of times when I start to get fatigued, I'll come up to here. And once I hit the
Hmm.
sticking point, I'm fine. But then this arm shoots up and
Yep.
then this one, then it, you know what I mean? Then it catches
Mhm.
up
Yeah.
because it's just one of the things. So my bench has always been my weak point, you know? And so I was like,
Yeah. There's
ah,
it's something about that atmosphere, man. I started competing like sanctioned meets in, I guess 2018 was when I did my first one, and it's almost addicting because you get in there and, like you said earlier, like nobody in there wants to see you fail. They
no,
might want to beat you, but everybody knows how hard they worked to get on that platform.
they want to beat you at your best.
Yes, nobody wants to. They don't want to see you get hurt. They don't want to see you miss a rep because they want to know they beat you on your best day, and then at the same time they're also encouraging you to be better. It's
Yeah.
it's not like any other sporting atmosphere I've ever been in, ever.
No,
It's
it's
great.
very. I will say that to a degree, I can say that because I've been in and around it.
Hmm.
I know quite a bit of people. Shout out to my friend. I don't know if you remember. He was on there too. Shout out to my friend Jim McDonald. I don't know if
Okay.
you remember familiar with him. So Jim McD is a good friend of mine.
Okay.
It's and anyway, that's a funny story. We can get into that at some point. But how I ended up talking to him. But um, you know, and I listen to a lot of these people. Jim's around powerlifting.
Mhm.
He owns a gym. Jim, I told him, I said, y'all missed out on an opportunity to call it Jim's Gym, but he's got a partner and everything. But so, um, but anyway, Third Street Barbell, look it up.
Mhm.
They got gear. Check them out. Anyway, and if you're in Sacramento, check them out. Uh, but so I've been around, a lot of those people. One of my good friends is coached by um, I'm just having a brain fart. Jesus Christ, he was a top 10 Olympian in like 2016. Why am I blanking out right now?
Not talking about Kendrick, are you?
Justin Compton.
Okay.
So, I've talked to Justin at length. I mean, we all went out to dinner together after one of my buddy's shows. I've talked hours to Justin Compton. Great guy too, by the way.
Mhm.
Real down to earth. Real, he he knows he's good, but it's one of those things where he's also very humble about it. He's not,
Mhm.
I'm the coolest guy in the world. It's a
Right.
really awesome person. So, I like listening to them. I like picking their brains because these are people who've done things that I'll never do in my life.
Right.
And so I try to learn as much as I can from them. And the one thing that I do notice in a lot, even in bodybuilding, is it's also very similar.
Mhm.
People want to beat those bodybuilders. They want to beat the other person at
Right.
their best on the stage.
Yeah.
They don't want to win because you mistimed your carb loading,
Right.
because you fucked up your pulling your water, because you know what I
Mhm.
mean. They want to, so I think there's something to be said for those individual sports, not just that, but it seems to be in strength, because it seems to be
Yeah.
in strongman as well.
In
They
Highland
want,
Games.
yeah, so they want to, I want to beat you at your
Mhm.
best. I don't want to win because of a technicality, because you were
Right.
sick, because you're coming back from a flu, because you're coming back from an injury. I want to win because I want to win. I don't want an asterisk next to my name,
Right.
you know?
And there's something else cool about those sports too. Is I know it's for sure in powerlifting, for sure in Highland Games. I'd be willing to bet strongman, but I've never really been to any strongman shows. But if you go to one of those shows as a newbie and you're like you're in the warm up room going, "Hey y'all, I have no clue really what I'm doing. This is my first meet." There's
That's your
almost
team right
always going
there.
to be 2 or 3 guys like, "I got you. We're going to get you through this." And
Hmm.
they're super accommodating, and it's a really great and like good atmosphere to be
Now
in.
there are some toxic shitheads, and it's mostly some of the young
It-
crowd.
but you
It's
have those guys in everything.
And yeah, so you're going to have those
Mm.
guys and everything, but I really feel like it's less than a lot of, because like I said, I've wrestled competitively. I've run track, done
Mhm.
field events, and I've done those things competitively. And there's people on your own team that, you know what I mean, that are like not even really pulling for you.
Right.
So, but there is something to be said about those. And yeah, it is a great atmosphere. We went, I told a buddy of mine, I saw an ad and they were putting one on over in St. Petersburg,
Mhm.
at a gym called Pack Animal Fitness, Pack Animal Gym. Great gym. Owner's a nice guy. I talked to him. I enjoy them. I enjoy some of the content they put out, but they were having a powerlifting meet, and it was maybe USPF or something. I can't remember, dude. You know, there's like 78 fucking federations. I mean, you know, no offense to any of the federations. Trust me,
There,
I like watching them all, but
there's a
some of them,
bunch.
it's like you look at the rules too. It's like the rules are the exact same, except one says keep your head on the bench, the other one says you can lift your head up.
Yeah.
You know, you can't scratch your balls, you can't put your feet on the bench. It's like there's always like these little,
One your feet can move, the other one your feet can't move.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, your feet's got to be this way, and then the
Yeah.
other one you can be on the balls of your feet. The other one
Yeah.
your heels got to touch. You know, but went over there to one, and sure enough, one of the guys I brought with me, like he was just kind of wanting to be more muscular, and then all of a sudden
Mhm.
he starts chasing numbers after that. You know, it's infectious.
It is.
You know, because and he even starts getting, you know, people are like, you know, especially on the grinders when they're coming up. You
Right.
know, there was a woman, I think she set a state record, and it was
Mhm.
well, I guess her squat suit set a state record. But I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. She's very strong. I'm just kidding. I was just take a dig at my equipped friends.
Your equipped crew.
Um, yeah, I just take a dig at them. I tell people all the time, they're like, "Oh, but they're wearing a squat suit." I'm like, that woman squatted like 650 pounds. Put on a suit and you go squat
Well,
650.
not even that. Just tell them put 650 on a bar and unrack it.
Yeah, just walk it out,
Just
or
walk
don't
it
even
out.
walk it out. Just stand up. You know, just
see if it doesn't fold you.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, so anyway, you know, and stuff like that, you know, they're grinding coming up, and
Right.
everybody in the crowd, even the children, like,
Yeah.
everybody's screaming. I don't
Yep.
even know this lady, and I'm like, come on, what's her
Yeah.
name? Donna, come on, Donna, or whatever her name was. You know, you don't know. You're like, come on, girl, you know, let's
Yeah.
go, you know. And so, yeah, it is really great.
Man, so and y'all's your gym is outside, right? Your gym just looks like it's like in a
Mine,
carport. Yeah.
yeah, okay. So our houses, it being where it is in Florida, it's on
Right.
stilts, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, you the carport's underneath. And so that's where I have my rack and everything set up. And of course, it's Florida, so I mean, even when it's cold, it's
Right.
still
It's not cold.
the weather is still fine. Yeah,
Yeah, it's it's
it's
it's
still.
it's it's 42 degrees here right now. So that's why I've got my hoodie on. I see you in the in the typical
Oh,
Florida
dude,
shirt.
yeah, I got slides on. I got slides on, cut off. Yeah.
So how do you think being involved in strength sports has kind of helped you like have your own thing while being a military spouse? Because that's one thing that I know like another
There's the
we
segue.
we had to do it eventually. We
Yeah.
had to do it eventually.
I think it's difficult, man, because you when you work for yourself, own your own business, whatever you want to call it. I tell you know, I tell people like I work for myself because I don't, you know, have any employees or anything. Um, when you do stuff like that, and I'm basically just freelance, you know,
Mhm.
just I pick up clients, I train people, you know, um, because even if you work for yourself, you still have to revolve around someone else's schedule,
Right.
your significant other.
Mhm.
So it's difficult to commit to certain things. I've been blessed by the community because I have had some support. Um, I was I got into, I don't like the term activism, right? Because it's kind of comes with a sort of a negative these days, right? There's a bit of a stigma around
Mhm.
in certain circles, but for lack of better terminology, that's what I did because when I realized that, I'm a grown man, you know what I
Right.
mean? Um, I am over the age of 30.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I have paid taxes. I have bought cars. I have,
Mhm.
owned land. I have, these other things. And so coming into this, I had already had so many years to figure myself out and sort of
Right.
kind of figure out who I am. And I still have done some growing since I married my wife and everything like that.
Mhm.
But we didn't get married until I was in my late 20s.
Mhm.
So I already had this, an adult life.
Right.
I started realizing that a lot of the younger men, um, let's face it, when you get out of high school or whatever, you don't know your ass from a hole in the ground.
You don't know nothing.
You don't, and if you're a young person and you're watching this, you're listening to this, yes, that goes for you as well. Because yes, both of us, he and I have both. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. When you're young, you think you got it figured out. You don't know anything.
You know
And
shit.
at my age, I'll tell you this, I now know just enough to understand that I still don't know anything.
Yeah, I'm in my
Um,
40s and I still don't know everything.
but we now have the knowledge that we don't have the knowledge, right?
Yes, that is what
So,
makes us more dangerous.
which is why I was saying earlier that I try to learn from as many people as I can. If it's
Right.
something that interests me, I want to learn. I want to understand what's going on.
Mhm.
So but what anyway, ADHD moment. Getting back to what I was saying, one of the things that I noticed was a lot of the guys. There was no community.
Yeah,
Fun fact: I was denied twice from the spouse group here, and then they blocked me.
because you're a guy.
I can I say for certain I don't know anybody. It was when I first moved here, and I'd never spoken to anybody, and I answered their
It's
questions. Yes,
it's
my
be-
wife is in the military. This is the stuff.
it's because you're
So,
a guy. It happens to guys all across the world. Like,
and my whole point is, working for myself, I'm the one that's generally at home with
right.
the young one. And so for me, it was I just want to be able to reach out and have play dates for my
Mhm.
kids and this and that and the other. But you know, um, anyway, what I noticed was is that for me, I can make do. I'll figure it out. I always
Mhm.
have. But for the younger guys who haven't had a chance to develop even long distance friendships
Mhm.
or have those lines of communications to people who you can talk to, because I can pick up the phone at any given time and I have somebody that I can call
Right.
usually and talk to if I need to talk to them. And a lot of these guys, you haven't been alive long enough to have that really.
Mhm.
And so I noticed that and I said, okay, well, this is crazy, man, because a spouse means spouse. It doesn't mean woman.
Right.
And I think because traditionally it did, it's
Mhm.
become sort of people have sort of conflated those two things, right? Like a
Mhm.
spouse and wife, and those two things are not um, always the case. And so I started noticing that, and I said, well, I started looking into it. I ended up meeting a few other really, really great guys, and and I noticed a lot of them had kind of just resigned to whatever. And I said, well, you know what? I'm not afraid of. I don't want to use the term confrontation, but for lack of a better term, I don't
That's
mind telling you what I think.
that's a fair
And
word there, I think.
well, you and I both given some of the things in our past, we're fine with that.
Yeah.
If I need to say you're lying to me, I will do that, and I won't
Mhm.
sugarcoat it. I won't go, well, I think you're. I'll be like, no, here you're lying, and here's why, and
You're
here's the
full of it.
evidence.
Yeah.
Yeah, and here you go. So I said, well, you know what? If not for me, at least for some other people,
Mhm.
because I would see in a couple of the groups that you and I are members of, some of these younger guys are like, man, I don't know what to do. There's nobody
Mhm.
helping me. Nobody wants to talk to me. So it was like, let me put my big head up in this space and see what I
Right.
can do. So that's I started getting into that, and um, so I say all that to say that going back to your original question, I was going somewhere with it. I promise. Um, uh, it's helped. because it gives me a foot in the door. I have
Right.
something to offer,
Mhm.
right? So, you know, there's a lot of, I tell people all the time, be useful, and
Mhm.
I am. So what can I do? Well, a lot of the focus, and this is kind of how I got into this. I ended up being, speaking to some people from independent
Mhm.
dot dot org.
Yep.
Side note, my opinions do not reflect the opinions of independent.org. My opinions reflect my own. All right. So,
That's
because
your, that's the
somebody,
official disclaimer.
he says a curse word or something. Yeah, because I'm a grown person, I'm a human being. All right.
Right.
So, but this wonderful group, and they were all about wellness, health and
Yeah.
wellness. And I
Mhm.
said, well, this is a way, and this is also a way. They were looking at diversifying. They're like, man, we got nothing but women, and it's difficult for us. We can't get a male perspective. Very
Yep.
open-minded. We're trying to get a male perspective because the male population within the spouse community is growing rapidly,
Yeah.
rapidly. And so, they had asked me to, kind of contribute some things to them, and then eventually the offer to join the team. And so now, because of that, I am an independent staff writer. And through all those dealings, December of last year, if you find a copy, and I have a bunch of them because they sent me 60 copies, you will see my ugly mug on the cover of Military Families Magazine.
Nice.
So shout out to them. I think it's AmeriForce Media. I want to say that's what it is. But they reached out to me and they were like, "Hey, would you be interested in having an interview?" I was like, "Yeah, that sounds great.
Mhm.
Anything that I can do to contribute and give back and things like that." And then a few hours later, "Hey, you want to be on the cover?" And I'm like,
Sure. Why not?
and so
I've
I'm
got,
thinking like, cool. I'll have 2 or 3. I'll have like 3 months to diet. You know what I mean?
right.
Diet down. Nah, dude, it was like a month, month and a couple weeks. So I just had to pull some tricks and whatever, but I
do,
still look
do,
all right. But
do a quick water cut.
yeah, does anybody have any diuretics?
Right. Go,
let me
go
just
live in the sauna.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just not going to eat any salt for a few days before and then all of a sudden I'm just going to eat a bunch of sugar and salt and see what
Yep.
happens, and then see if I blow up.
We'll make this work.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. Like, excuse me, sir, why are you wearing a trash bag? Look, I get a photo shoot in an hour. Leave me alone.
Don't worry about it.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry
You're
about it. This
asking
is
the
an
wrong
old wrestling
questions.
technique. Yeah, it's old wrestling technique. Um, but anyway, so yeah, I was able to do that. So um, it's given me, it's been useful,
Mhm.
not just for me, but to other people. And because of that, it allows me to have a voice within that community to speak up and speak on on behalf of some of the people who don't have that opportunity.
Right.
So it's been great. And largely, there have been some people that are really threatened. They do not like, they don't want men in that space. And they feel really threatened. And to those people, I say, um, cope, because this is this is happening, and this is, I used to tell people all the time in my previous career, this is happening. Go
Mhm.
with it.
Yeah, just
It's happening. This is we are this is what we're doing. There's a lot of
Mhm.
people out here who don't have a voice, and they need to be included, and they deserve to be included because they face not only the same stressors that you do, but stressors that you can't even fathom because you have support groups.
Yeah.
They don't. They
I think
don't have people that they can ask questions to.
that was the biggest thing I noticed kind of whenever, because like when my wife first joined, we got her first duty station was 3 hours away from both of the towns that we grew up in. So like that first duty station, really not that big a deal. We had
Yeah,
family right
you
there.
go home on the weekends
Yeah.
and do a
But
day
then
trip back home for lunch.
whenever we moved, all of a sudden all that support went away.
Mm.
And on top of that, we weren't even attached to a base because she was at a year-long, she went to school for a year at Walter Reed. And so we
Understandable.
weren't attached to anybody. And we were just kind of, I had nothing. So I had to like create my own support,
Mm.
knowing we were only going to be there for a year. But
Yeah,
yeah, it's, that's one thing that's cool about, you know, being involved in string sports is like you said, it's useful because a lot of people can be like, hey, can you help me with this? It's like, yeah, I can help you with that. And that
it
kind
helps
of
get your name out there.
well, but on top of that, like once it could be somebody coming to you for something completely different. And like because you know how it is. Like you get in the weight room, you start getting comfortable around people, then all of a sudden you start talking about things that aren't weight room related. So
I know some of the deepest, darkest secrets of my clients that
it
I
just
will, if they're watching this, don't worry, I'll take them to the grave. But you know, you definitely develop those relationships, and that helps,
Mhm.
especially if you're in a position with someone who is not used to being around. Because I have trained plenty of spouses,
Mhm.
especially some of the women. Um, that helps now. They are being exposed to someone who is identifying as a military spouse
Right.
that is not fitting that cookie cutter mold that
Mhm.
they are used to, and so that also helps change perception,
Yes, it does.
right?
Well,
Yeah.
because I mean, if you look at stats, like even as recently as 5 years ago, it was like 2% of spouses were males. And I saw a statistic this week that said it's like 9% are
Nine.
males.
It's nine. Yeah, it was nine as of the last big survey that they did.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and and it's growing rapidly. And you know what
yeah.
else is growing rapidly that a lot of people aren't including? And this is not. I don't fall. This is not my crew, so to speak, or whatever. But I would like to take this opportunity since I'm here. Is another thing that's growing is same-sex couples.
That's exactly what I was going to
Um,
say.
and so that's another space
Hmm.
that, okay, so now let's say, okay, so you're a male spouse, and on top of that, you are married to another man.
Yeah.
So now, not only are you going to have to deal with the same things that you and I deal with,
Hmm.
now you're going to have to deal with people's these preconceived
Yeah.
notions that they have, and these
Yeah.
other prejudices that might be around. And I know that they deal with this because several of them are my friends,
Yeah.
and it's so heartbreaking for me sometimes to like, you kind of vent about it a little bit, and they're like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean, and you're like,
Yeah.
of course you do, and then some. You kind of feel a little bit, you're like, damn, like here I am, you
Hmm.
know making a big, not really making a big deal about it, but here I am, kind of whining about this. And so I like to take that opportunity to tell people, look, man, that it's not 1950 anymore.
Right.
The landscape has changed, and I think it's time for us collectively to embrace that.
Hmm.
You know,
No, you're 100% right. The landscape is changing. It's changing rapidly. And like you just said, it's changing in ways that most people aren't even. And I really think it's like some of the older heads that, but I can't even say that because I know there's a lot of newer spouses that are, I'll just say a lot of the newer female spouses that are like, oh, are there any ladies that have any info about this? And it's like,
but look
I'm
at
not,
where that came from.
yeah,
But I want you to look at where it comes from, because that rolls downhill.
yeah,
So what
absolutely.
what happens? What happens a lot of the times is that a lot of the times behind that, and I've seen it firsthand. I'm not saying it's every time,
Hmm.
but a lot of the times it's because somebody who has been around a little bit longer than them, a seasoned or
Yeah.
veteran, whatever terminology you want to use, I don't care.
Hmm.
It's kind of these things where they kind of like, oh, well, this, that, and the other, and
Yeah.
it's sort of a learned thing, because
Hmm.
that's, it's a new culture, so to speak,
Yeah.
and it really is. It's its own culture, and so a lot of times that comes from it. I know I've met several of them, brand new, husbands have just gotten
Hmm.
out of their AIT training, whatever, and they're just now getting on the job, and they're just regular folks,
Yeah.
because I don't think they've had time to sort of be around that.
Right.
And again, for anybody listening, we're speaking sort of in just generalities. We're not saying it's everywhere and it's not all the
Hmm.
time, but unfortunately, part of advocating for something is speaking out against the things that go against what you're advocating for.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have to have these uncomfortable conversations, and I have them all the time. It's very uncomfortable for me sometimes to have to be like, you know, hey, for example, I was in a seminar one time, and I was speaking, and this woman came up, and she seemed nice enough, but like within 5 minutes, she had to let everybody know that her husband was a commander 4 or 5 times. And so finally, I said, hey, let me just pause you right there. I said, I need you to understand that no one cares.
Yeah.
Okay, no one cares because you're not in the military. Okay, you are the same as everyone else around over in this seminar. You're the same as everyone in the audience listening. Okay, when you do things like that, what you're doing is you're alienating not only yourself, but
Hmm.
you're alienating other people. And I was like, that type of speech, I don't really want to hear that here, please. And oh, I didn't realize I was doing it. And genuinely, I don't think she did. She's just so used to doing
it was
that.
ingrained in her to be able to say that.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. The person down there whose, husband has been in there for 5 years and who's like, friggin' E4, E5, you're no different than that person. Maybe you have a little bit more life experience or whatever, but we're all here united under the same sort of cause. And so that's some of the things like that. I also try to speak out to, and because I'm my own person.
Right.
I don't my personality does not, and this is ruffle some feathers, but I've written about this in articles as well. But my personality does not revolve around my wife's shadow.
Right.
Okay. And I mean that as respectfully as I can. One of the things, and this is the part where I'm going to get on my soapbox for a second, if you don't mind. So just
knock yourself
stop
out.
me if I. So one of the things that I hate to say preach, but it kind of is because I get kind of preachy with it. One of the things that I always try to tell people is that your personality should not revolve around a situation. Okay. Being a military spouse is a situation and it is temporary. Eventually, your significant other is going to get out of the military, some way, shape, or form. Retirement, getting out early, whatever the case may be, medical retirement, doesn't matter. After that, that's not your identity anymore.
Right.
You're not that thing. So then what they try to do is, well, I'm a veteran spouse.
Not a thing.
Throw it out. Right. I understand and I value your experience. I would listen to you. But what I'm saying is that's you attempting to still cling to that identity. That's not an identity. It is a temporary situation. That's why I always preach to people. And this is something we as male spouses have had to do, as well as I do.
Oh, yeah.
Our community, our community and our personal community, 9 times out of 10, guess what? They're not other spouses.
Right.
They're things outside of that because we are forced to do that because we're not accepted in that circle, generally speaking. Like I said, there are a lot of wonderful people out there. That organization that I do some work for, that I volunteer with, independent.org. Independent, very welcoming to me. They value my opinions. They allow me to say what I need to say, respectfully, of course. And I have to be able to articulate these things, but very supportive. So there's a lot of them out there, but we are still trying to change. Anyway, the point that I'm making is make sure that your personality, whether you're man, woman, doesn't matter. Make sure that your personality does not revolve around this situation. You are your own person. And so that's why I tell people, who am I? I'm a gamer. I love playing video games. I recently, a couple of years ago, I started getting back into anime. I read the manga or the comic books, whatever, I watch the anime. I love to lift weights. I do that sort of thing. I enjoy being outside. You know what I mean? I enjoy being a father. There's a multitude of things that I enjoy. I'm a huge Star Trek nerd. You know what I mean? All of these things encompass who I am.
Right.
So I don't go on and say, I identify myself as a military spouse. And so that's the point I try to drive home. Be proud of who you are, but remember not to build yourself around this one thing. Somebody said it a while back in a podcast and said, I hate identifying as being the lifter because I could get hit by a bus tomorrow and not be able to lift really for the rest of my life. Well, where's my personality now?
Right.
So anyway, end of my little soapbox there. So hopefully I got the point across.
No, I think you did. And that's something I just thought of is I'm sure this has happened to you, more than once. For sure more than once. It's happened to me God knows how many times in the last 13 years. Is you're somehow out with your spouse and let's like with us, like we go to pay with like our USA debit card. And the
Thanks
person
for your service.
But they're saying it to me. I'll be right there with my wife and I'm like, what part of this? I'm like, nope, I'm support staff. She's a service member. And they're like, oh, okay.
Well, a lot of people don't understand. A lot of people don't understand.
That, go ahead.
Well, sorry. What I was to say is, we joke about it, but I genuinely don't blame people who are not. They're just genuinely trying to be nice, and generally associated historically up until very recently, all the posters and billboards have been dudes.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I'll put it to you this way. I have a beard. And I normally keep it very trim. I kind of, I'm a little stubbly now because, whatever, I don't have to shave. So I try not to shave as often. Um, but, and I usually keep a pretty low haircut, and I usually keep it nice and tight and everything like that. Well, on the base that we're at, there's a big presence of special forces guys here. And I keep in shape. You know what I mean? I stay in shape. The way that I speak, I'm articulate. You know what I mean? And the way I carry myself.
You could probably pass for a team guy.
So there were a couple guys. There was a couple of guys, and one of them was one of those guys. He works over at SOCOM, and he goes, are you? He said, are you at SOCOM? You in which building are you at, or something like that? And I was like, I'm not in the military. And he goes, oh, he goes, are you a contractor?
Right.
No. And this is somebody who works there. And he was genuinely asking me. And I said, flattering, I appreciate it. He said, well, you even though you have the face, because I don't let it go below my lip. I don't let it go. You know what I mean? Everything's neat and trim and tidy, and even my neck is shit. So he was like, I didn't know. And or maybe you could be, a Canadian, or some other place where they may allow facial hair or whatever. Actually, I don't even know if Canadians allow facial hair, but anyway, some places do. Yeah. So so I've had that happen. So I'm not mad at people like that. But again, this is why we're doing what we're doing, because not only are we advocating for ourselves, we're also advocating for our wives.
Right. But I think where I was going with that is I wonder if that's where a lot of the female spouses kind of latch onto that identity, is like, we get it and we're quick to say, no, that's our spouse, I'm support staff. Whereas they're like, oh, well, I'm the military spouse too. So I wonder if that may have something to do with that, like on the back end of their mind, like I'm looking for something to attach myself to it as well. It's just a thought that I just had.
Well, one of the elephants in the room is that it is very difficult to find yourself.
Yeah.
In this, you and I have had the fortune that we've been fortunate enough to develop who we are as people before we married and before we did those things, generally speaking, right? Because I don't know how old you were, but like I said, I was in my late 20s. So, I mean, I was already a whole grown man, but, by the time this happened. And I kind of had some sense of direction as far as who I am. And so I think it just depends, because I've met one of my former neighbors. She didn't marry her husband until she was in her early 30s, and she was already a professional. So she was very much the similar mentality to me. She was like, yeah, I get it, but that's not my identity. I think a lot of it has to do with because when you're younger, that's really formative, right? That's when you're starting to develop who you are. Your boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, you get married, they join the military very early on, late teens, early 20s. You still kind of don't know who you are, and that's still a developing thing. And so that definitely becomes a big part of who you are, because I think that's what's going on. So I think there's a multitude of factors. It's hard to call it. I've heard people say, it's because most of them stay home and they don't do anything. And it's like, okay, I kind of hear what you're saying. Weeding through the insults and all that stuff, I kind of understand kind of where you're going, because myself, working for myself, I'm home most of the day. A lot of my clients are virtual. So I do a lot of things online, so I can do everything in the comfort of my pajamas. But I think that we're all human beings. We're all different. All of our life experiences are different. You can't just paint everybody with a broad brush. I'm sure the isolation contributes to it, because you're looking for something. So you reach out and you find these people who have a similar situation to you. And you're like, there's some people that are like me. And there's something we can all, as humans, we all want to be able to relate. I think the problem is that sometimes it goes that extra step where it becomes, I'm using it as a reference as to who I am. It's kind of like that Mitch Hedberg joke. I want to be so badass on the yo-yo that it becomes a reference as to who I am. Is that Mitch, the dude who's really badass on the yo-yo? And I think there's a lot of it there as well. So I'm always very careful I don't want to alienate anybody, and I don't want to offend anyone, because everybody does have a unique experience.
Yeah. And you're definitely not wrong there. I mean, for us, like you said, my wife and I, we're coming up on 20 years being married, but she's only been in the Air Force for 13.
Yeah.
So our story.
So both of you had a life before that.
Yeah,
so you went through that together.
Yeah. So we were a couple. We were a married couple for 6 years, 7 years before she ever joined.
Yeah.
And that is that is every almost everybody I've talked to, they're like, really? Like, yeah, like we had a whole nother plan going, and then she decided to join the Air Force. Or I joke around and say like we decided because that was a family conversation because we were married.
Yeah,
So
100%.
that's a
She's going to come to
giant
you and say, "Hey,
conversation.
this is what I'm thinking about. It's going to
Yeah.
alter our entire future because any plans we had where we're at, those are out the
Yeah, those are
window."
out the window.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. So, yeah, and another thing that I also get is, and I've had it a couple times because of my past and your past.
mhm,
We're not exactly people who are foreign to that type of environment.
right.
Um, Whereas, I've never been in the military. I don't think you've never been in
Nope,
the military, have you? So
never.
you and I have never been in the military. However, what we've done before kind of gives us a lot of insight, and we've been in and around
Mhm.
that type of environment. So I am more widely accepted when people meet me,
Yeah.
because I'm a guy. I smoke cigars, and I lift heavy weights, and
Mhm.
and all that stuff, and I can drink with the guys. So I kind of have that going for me. But I have run into it a couple times where I've had a couple dudes, and
Mhm.
I say I've said a couple things, where it's kind of like, "Oh, Mr. Mom, huh?" And I'm like, "Well, this Mr. Mom can bench more than you squat. So I don't know. I don't know what kind of mom you're talking about. I guess I'm a jack mom." And I gotta flip the script a little bit on it, not
Yeah.
necessarily because I'm insecure about it, because I'm very comfortable in my position at
Mhm.
this point. I'm fine with it. Um, but again, to try to change that narrative to him, it's like,
Yeah.
you sure do talk a lot of smack for a guy who can't even lift his own body weight.
Right.
And then there's a couple times where you kind of got to let people, "Hey man, let me pump these
Mhm.
brakes for you," because you're
Exactly.
kind of getting let out of hand. You're getting a little out of hand. You're getting a little out of pocket. So they think, well, I'm in the military because
Mhm.
no, 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 no. And I'm like, look, man, you don't really know what I dealt with,
Right.
and you probably haven't dealt with what I've dealt with. So let's just be humans and be nice to one another. So I don't
Mhm.
know if have you ever run into any of that where there's kind of like this, "Oh, that's that weird guy over there that's, you know."
I haven't had that many issues with it. It's happened a couple times, and
So you know what I'm talking about.
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Like, usually my go-to is, well, you want to go to the range? Like we can, like if you like you think you're so cool, let's go to the range and you tell me what you want me to shoot, and I can shoot it.
Well, how about this? You shoot something with a rifle, and then I'll shoot it with a pistol, and that's a true story. So off air, if you want, I got a video. I got a video of my wife and I, and I'm shooting a pie plate at 100 150, 160 yards with a pistol with iron sights. So
Nice.
yeah, I was also a competitive shooter for a while. So
Oh, so you didn't say that.
Look, man, I've done a lot of things. I don't talk, like I've told you, I don't talk about my past a lot, but
Right.
I'm a firearms instructor, um,
Nice.
and did some things and trained some people, and so I've been in around that environment. So
Mhm.
like I said, I do kind of understand. I don't pretend to understand the intricacies of the military because I've been around it most of my
Right.
life, but I'm not in the military, so I'm not like, "Oh, I know what I know what I'm talking
Yeah.
about," but I'm not a complete novice here, right? So I've seen a few things.
Exactly.
So yeah, every now and then you got to kind of pull that out. Like, "Yeah, man, let's go to the range if you want to." "Oh, get rifles," and I'm like, "Yeah, man, I can teach a chimpanzee how to shoot a rifle. How about let's shoot this pistol? Let's see how accurate you really are." You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So,
That's
um,
I've had that a few times. It really hasn't been much because for whatever
it's
reason,
usually it's usually kind of a subtle thing where they kind of,
yeah.
and then you got to kind of subtly kind of, "Hey, man, let's
Eh,
let's try to get back into the center here."
well, it's like I was trying
Yeah.
to tell a friend of mine because like I've got a couple friends, and some of the same people that I do that are they're female spouse they're female spouses that are they're trying to make good changes in the world, and they're trying to do good things, and it never fails. They start talking about it on their social media, and all of a sudden the trolls come out, and they're making the dependent jokes, and they're saying, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking about." And I'm like, I asked one of my friends, I said, "How come is it y'all make those comments and you get the trolls? I make those comments and it's real quiet." And I'm like, there's something
They
about
don't know how to
me.
deal that. Well, I think a lot of people don't know how to deal with us because, like I said, I mean,
Mhm.
it's up until very recently, it was quite a bit of a unicorn situation,
Yeah.
and so I think a lot of people just don't know how to deal with us. And for me, I always try to be very patient because a lot of people just aren't too familiar with it.
Mhm.
I mean, like on this base, I see several of the male spouses, None of our are in any of the groups that you and I are members of.
Mm-hmm.
And they just do their own thing. And largely that's what most of us do. I just
Yeah.
happened to be in a position where I was able to sort of get my foot in the door, and some of these wonderful people you're talking about, and that are really, really, their heart's absolutely in the right place, and they
Mm-hmm.
are listening.
Yeah.
And they are trying to use their sort of positions and what they've achieved to try to help bring everybody else along with them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I commend them for that. But yeah, it's usually kind of a subtle thing. And I try not to be disrespectful, even if people are kind of disrespectful for me, because I'm old enough now that, I'm pretty secure in who I am,
Right.
um, and so I usually try to sort of redirect, like judo, right? Like I sort of
Yeah.
try to like
Redirect
use
the energy.
verbal
Verbal
judo, right?
judo.
Like I try to, right? Yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
So
100%.
verbal judo, you try to redirect,
Mm-hmm.
without, every now and then you kind of got to fight fire with fire. Like I said, some of the guys, like the one guy where I was like, you talk a lot of smack for a guy who can't even lift his own body weight. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you just kind of got to pull out. Some people only respond to that.
Yeah.
And it's unfortunate. And I really shouldn't even engage with that, but I'm human. So
sometimes it feels good to do it though.
sometimes it does.
Mm-hmm.
I usually kind of feel bad about it though, because it also says a lot about me when I say those things.
Mm-hmm.
So I always tell people, you see somebody makes a crappy comment online. Would you rather make another crappy comment and people think you're both assholes? Or would you
Mm-hmm.
rather just say, hey, you know what, man, I'm sorry you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with. Have a nice day, and then leave, block them. And then people understand that you don't have time for that.
Right.
I'd rather people think of me, in a better light. I don't really care too much about what people think, but I also don't need people, because here's another thing that, we are a direct reflection in what we do.
Yeah.
With our significant others. So if I'm
Mm-hmm.
out here slinging up mud and talking all kinds of smack and running my mouth, it just reflects poorly on my wife.
Yeah.
And so there have been plenty of times where I wanted to say something and I go, bite my lip, bite my tongue, because for fear of what that might look like for her. And she's very supportive of me. She's like,
Mm-hmm.
nah, whatever, and blah, 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 blah. And that I don't need anything that I say to get misconstrued. Like if it has to do with what I'm talking about, the fitness and stuff like that, but if it has to do with an environment that my wife might catch a little bit of flack or something like that, I try to avoid that.
Yeah. I think where I was going with that is like, if at least online for sure, people seem more confident and more willing to say mean, snarky things to the ladies online than they are to us whenever we're talking about, we can be talking about the exact same thing, but people are like, no, I'm going to go after, I'm going to go after the female and say something snarky and not to the guy. I see that all the time.
And that, my friends, is called sexism.
Sexism, 100%.
And that's what it is. Just because I'm here to advocate for male military spouses doesn't mean I'm not going to defend, the females that are around. I have heard some terrible things. But look, I think the jokes are hilarious.
Yeah.
People say something about Dependa, and obviously you've leaned into it.
I loved it.
You've leaned into it. Yeah. So for me, I always correct them and I say, no, man, I'm kind of built. I'm a triceratops. And so I like to lean into it a little bit too. But but I do see what you're saying. Yeah, I've seen quite a bit of that too. And I think to a degree, when I first came into this, admittedly, I may have had some of those negative sort of like, oh man, yeah, just complaining, always a victim and all this stuff and blah, 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 blah. And then just over the years, I've sort of understood that that's definitely not always the case.
Yeah.
And it's definitely caused me to check myself on some of those sort of preconceived notions that I've had. And for me, again, I'm growing up as an Army brat, living all over, I had some exposure to that. And of course, it's like I tell people, my father told me this one time, and I tell people, anybody that'll listen, people never remember what you did for them. They always remember what you didn't do. And likewise, they never remember the good things that you did. They always remember when you said something out of turn or you said something bad. Those are the memorable things, so I think a lot of the times we are getting our information from people when they're in a bad mood, they're having a hard time, maybe they lost someone personal, close to them. So trying to check those things. But yeah, you sexist dickheads out there, dude,
But and it's like,
what's my my go-to phrase is always fight me, right? But not actually combat, but I'm willing to debate with people on it because I have definitely seen both sides now,
Yeah.
and it can be frustrating when you live in an environment. I'll say this right now. I've said it publicly before. I have witnessed firsthand sexism in the military against against women, and that also extends to a lot of the spouses.
Yeah.
So it does exist. I've seen it.
100% exists. And anybody that will sit there and say, "Oh no, it doesn't," they're either blind or just plain ignorant.
I've got some stories. I've got some stories I could tell of a couple of confrontations, but it involves my wife, and my wife's a very private person, so I don't bring that up. I'll tell you in a sidebar conversation when we get off air and all that stuff. But yeah, I've seen it firsthand, and it was kind of one of those things of, okay, I'm a believer. You know what I mean? I see it.
Yeah.
I'm witnessing it. So I don't
a
I don't know
lot
what
of
your wife
times,
has had to deal with, but
well, my wife's medical, and medical is its whole. I always tell people it's almost like a completely different part of the Air Force. Like you have line side, then you have medical side.
but even in the Army, dealing with some of the Army doctors, like you get a captain or a major come in and they're like, "What's up, dude? How you doing?" It's just like it's like a different mentality
Yeah.
almost. It's more of like, I'm here because these people are paying for my medical school. I'm not here to be the the hoo-ha and all that stuff. So yeah, it's a bit of a different atmosphere.
But you talk about earlier. You're saying like you never know what people are saying and where they're coming from. You never know what kind of day somebody's having whenever they're having some of these moments. Like you have one kid.
Yeah. So I have one, but we have
Uh,
two. I also have a stepson.
okay, so I've got two kids. I can imagine there's probably been some times where you're at the store with both of them, sleep deprived, kids are cranky. Maybe you're not handling it quite as well as you should.
That's every parent, man.
Exactly, that's every parent, but it's one of those things like you never like some of these. Oh my god, this one.
If you don't put
day at
that
the
chocolate back,
store.
I'm gonna beat your ass.
Yeah,
like that type of thing. Yeah.
like I can only imagine like some of these stories that people like to talk about catching a dependent in the wild, as people like to say. It's like you don't know what that person's going through that day.
Let me tell you something. This is a true story. I'll tell you. When my son first, um, it was the first time I had to take him to his appointment by myself, and I'm having to do the paperwork. And he's a very young toddler. He's running around. There's all kinds of people there, and I'm trying to do the paperwork, and and this woman, I don't know who you were, and I wish I did because I would like buy you dinner because this woman was so amazing. She saw what was going on, and she goes, and I was like, no, come back, and I'm trying to do it, and she could see I'm just,
right.
I'm just,
Flustered.
I'm almost locked up. I'm just like, oh my god, and I just got one kid, and
right.
I'm getting used to being a parent at that point and doing some things on my own that I'm not used to doing on my own. So she comes up to me and she goes, "Hey, yeah, no, that's fine. I'll watch it." And she brings them over and they're playing with her kids and she's helping. No, come back here. And I was
Yep.
She helped me. I was able to fill out the paper, and it was just 2 or 3 minutes. Yeah, you and I both can hand jam 3 or 4 pages in about 2.5 minutes. You know what I mean? But
for sure,
that I just needed that 2.5
Yep.
minutes. I couldn't even get it, and she gave it to me. And so, um, shout out to people that are like that. And I've always tried to pass it down, especially and you can tell, clearly I'm a new parent. I was a new parent.
right.
I don't know what the hell I'm doing. And she's got like 3 kids. She's like, I got this shit. Don't worry about it, bro. Fill out your paperwork. And then
It's
she
it's
even offered,
crazy
she
how
was like,
far a little kindness goes, right?
dude, it turned a horrible day into actually a good day.
Yeah.
And so whoever you were, ma'am, you deserve, if I ever run into you, because I remember your face, if I ever run into you, I'm just like going to give you money. Just don't freak out. Just take it and go buy yourself something nice. Let me get you a gas card or something. So yeah, it's not all bad. And
right.
It is true though. You can tell, like, now I'm a bit more of a veteran parent now. I kind of understand it. And I see you can tell it's a newer parent and the kid's just being a kid, grabbing stuff on the shelves and trying to hide in the clothes at the PX, or they don't even call it the PX anymore. They just call it the exchange now, right? So
I still call it the BX because it was always the base exchange.
Yeah, post exchange. Yeah, now everybody's talking about the exchange. You go to the EX, the exchange, this, that, and the other. And they're like, what's a PX? And I'm like, the Post
Post
Exchange,
exchange.
because that's what it was when I was a kid in
Right.
like the 90s. It was the
Mhm.
PX and the Power Zone and the
Oh yeah.
Shopette. And
Mhm.
that's what it now,
And the
it's, oh, I got to go to the
classics.
gas station. Yeah, you got to go to the gas station. And they're like, why don't you do, and like, I got to go to the gas station. And my first thought is like, why are you leaving the base? And they're like, oh, the
Exactly.
one on base. I'm like, oh, no.
Oh yeah. So
Okay.
just while you were gone, the American Pro meet was today.
Yeah.
The big powerlifting meet. I had a couple friends competing. My buddy Tracy, this dude's a monster. He competes in the 110 kilo class. All right. Listen to his numbers from today: 650 squat, 500 bench, and a 711 deadlift. He totaled 1862 at 110 kilos. So he's like what roughly 220.
Yeah. That's benching my max deadlift that I've ever deadlifted in my life is just kind of insane.
And whenever I tell you that he's one of the nicest guys I've ever met, he competed
Have
in my
you?
he competed in my the first sanction meet I ever did. He competed, and then whenever I started judging, I was judging a meet in North Georgia, and we crossed paths. Now I hadn't seen him face to face in like 3 years at this point, and he turned around, he's go, "Hey Mike, what's up, man?" I was like, "Oh, hey Tracy." Super nice
Dude,
guy.
I got started lifting in a gym where I started lifting. My friend Joe, got me into lifting. And there was a gym that he went to, and it was a private. It was basically this guy had just made a gym on his property, and it was
Mm-hmm.
a proper gym, rack, bench, incline bench, decline bench, full cable machine,
Mm-hmm.
full cable machine, not just one stack,
Nice.
with high and low pulleys. I mean, he's got hack squat, squat press.
Mm-hmm.
You got the old, pads, and you stand on it for your calf
Oh
raises,
yeah, yeah.
and he's got all these things. So anyway, he invited me along, and the first time we went in there was just this monstrosity of a dude,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't remember who it was. He had like 540 on the bar, or 545, or something like that. Let's just say 550 for shits and giggles. And I watched him knock out 6 reps, and I don't know, I haven't seen him lift all that much,
Uh-huh.
but I would estimate that was probably like an RPE of like 8.5, maybe 9. And he gets done, and then he does it for 2 more sets. And I was like,
Those are the people you see. Those people you just want to turn around and walk back out of the gym.
well, so the funny thing is this is why I always loved sort of the West Side Barbell story.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always upset to this day that I'll never be able to meet Louis Simmons. I don't think, for anybody paying attention, if you know West Side Barbell, I don't think I'm at that caliber, right? I have no illusions. I'm no elite
Yeah.
lifter, you know, uh, you know, obviously you heard earlier, I put up some pretty good numbers for my
Mm-hmm.
body weight, but, um, that was definitely RPE of like 100, right? Like
Right.
that was pure adrenaline. People were
Mm-hmm.
watching, and I didn't want to fail.
Right.
And I actually kind of injured my shoulder on the bench press, and re-injured it, because I'm always injuring my shoulder. And uh I went in there, and this was before all that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the invite from the owner. I had gone there a couple times with my buddy, and then eventually the owner was there. He introduced me, and he said, "Hey, you're more than welcome to come in here, and train anytime you want." So
Mm-hmm.
now I can go. So I started going on my own sometimes. And when I was with my buddy, that they knew him,
Yeah.
and so he was respected. And so I got the pass by
Right.
association. When he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't with me, nobody cared. Nobody
Right.
would talk to me, and I understood the pecking order, right?
Yeah.
So if I was bench pressing and those guys showed up and said, "You almost done?" That didn't mean, "Are you almost done?" That
You're
means you're
done.
done.
Yeah.
And then of course I would make up some. I could be in the middle of my warm-ups. I'd be like, "Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm moving on to incline after this."
Mm-hmm.
Or so, I would just pick a different movement, because that's just,
Right.
I would just go to dumbbells or whatever. If they, if they needed the dumbbells, I'd go to flat bench, whatever it was. And one time they came in to train legs, and that was supposed to be my leg day. I just basically brought out some dumbbells and did a bunch of goblet squats, because that's all, and so it was one of those pay your dues kind of thing. It's something a lot of people don't know. So I came up in that environment, and so I went from nobody talked to me to I was able to walk in and say what's up, and people would say what's up to me. And then I remember it was the first time I pulled 400, or it was 405 conventional, and some of the big guys were in there. And I remember I put it down, and I was by myself. Nobody was with me, and I was very proud of myself. It was the first time I'd ever done it. And somebody had taken a video of it, and I actually still have a picture of it. And I did it, and I put it down, and then I realized, I looked around, and they were kind of looking at each other, kind of nodding, like, okay. And that was like, maybe you've arrived. Maybe now, and it was one of those things like, it's okay, now you can train here. And then from that moment forward, it came to, I would show up, and then it was, hey, we need a third guy, jump in, you're training chest today. I might have trained chest yesterday. But guess what? I'm risking rhabdo today, because I'm training again. And so that's what you did. And then eventually it became, sometimes I go in there to train. They'd be like, what are you training? I can't figure out what I want to do today. And I'd be like, oh, I'm going to do a little chest and triceps or whatever. And they'd be like, cool, I'll jump in with you. So then that's how the respect was earned. You didn't jump on like a Planet Fitness or, dude, if you were a nobody, if you didn't have any strength, and I was never all that strong. If you were a nobody, you paid your dues. The only reason you were there is because the owner of it allowed you to be there. They didn't want you there. And so that's why, as I started getting more into like the powerlifting and the more the strength stuff, I started seeing like Westside Barbell, and I started looking into that and reading about that, and reading some of the articles, and looking at interviews with Louis and different things like that. And I was like, that's how I started.
Yeah.
I actually the joke when Louis told, I can't remember who it was, he goes, I got women stronger than you, kid. I was actually told that, I came in there, and this guy, I said something about, getting a little bigger, and he goes, my girlfriend has bigger arms than you. And you don't argue, you just put your head down and go lift, because that's just the way it is. And it's, is it a toxic environment? But just like Dave Tate said, when he was like, what was the positive aspect? I don't know, but we all got stronger.
We all got stronger.
That was it. I got stronger. And then eventually it came to, people know who I am. I visited not too long ago, probably a year or so ago, and I ran into one of the guys, and I said, hey, man, how you doing? I said, you probably don't remember me. He goes, no, I remember you. He goes, dude, you put on a lot of size. He was like, you look good. And I was like,
little tear.
Dude, I immediately called my buddy, because he's long since moved away on the West Coast as well. And I called him, and I was like, oh my God, dude. I was like a kid that met like Superman, I was like, oh my God, dude.
They remembered me.
He said I was looking great. He said I was looking great. And then, that's, at that point, that was when sort of the imposter syndrome started to fade away, because I still see myself as the little skinny, no muscle mass bird chest guy. And then when the strongest guy that lifts there still, who has set state records, says, you look good, man. Looks like you've put on quite a bit of size. I was like, and this is one of those people who's not giving compliments lightly. They're not going to blow smoke. And so that's when that started to kind of fade away. But that's what I got into it. So it's kind of difficult to go from that, like, blood shooting out of your nose while you're squatting and deadlifting to like, okay, water break. Like it's a little bit difficult of a transition, because I've done some freelance work here. They had some classes that I used to teach here on the base when they had them. And so I've done some classes here, and it's like, some of the people would show up, and they'd do like 5 reps, and they'd be like, oh, and they'd re-rack it. And I was like, what
are you doing?
Like, you could have done 10. What are you doing? Like, they're like, yeah, I was starting to feel it a little bit. Yeah, I was starting to get a little lightheaded. And I'm like, cool, pause, take a deep breath, brace, and keep going. Like,
Yeah. What are you doing?
but so going from that environment to like a more of a health,
Mhm.
sort of conscious environment it was foreign. And
Yeah.
it still kind of is, because I'll push myself. I hurt
Mhm.
myself all the time. I got to get that extra rep. I got to do,
Right.
I got to deload because my elbows hurt, right? Like my elbows ache. Like
My elbows hurt
that's,
every day. What are you talking about?
yeah, like my elbows ache. And like, I'm like, there's not a lot of people who lift heavy enough to where they know they need to deload because
Mhm.
they're grouchy.
Right.
You know what I'm talking about? Where you're kind of overreaching and you're pretty much about in that overtraining scenario, and you
Mhm.
catch yourself, you're like, hey, I need to back off for a week.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or sleep more. Maybe I need to eat a few more calories
Mhm.
over the next few days or something. So yeah, that environment, I miss it to some extent, but it's just, as we all know, um, anything extreme is not sustainable.
Right.
And powerlifting is an extreme sport. Make no mistake. Bodybuilding is an extreme sport.
Yeah.
I actually think bodybuilding, and it's, some people say it's not a sport, it's more like a pageant, whatever you want to call it. I think that bodybuilding is the most difficult competition as it pertains to preparation.
100%.
I don't think
If
there's,
people look at what actually goes into getting stage ready, 99% of the people that say, "Oh, I could do that if I had their kind of time," they wouldn't survive the diet.
you wouldn't survive the diet, and you can blame it on the drugs all you want, but I've trained people. Now I've lifetime natural. I've never taken anything. As a matter of
Mhm.
fact, I probably could get on. I mean, I got my testosterone check like a year ago, and it was, now granted, it was a very stressful time for me. I had a lot
Mhm.
going on. I wasn't sleeping well, but my testosterone was like 415,
Okay.
which some people don't believe. They're like, really, 415? And I'm like, but you also understand that that number is just arbitrary in and of itself, right? You have
Right.
to, it's, how does your body utilizing it?
Yeah.
I know guys that have testosterone, their testosterone scores would be 700, 800, but they have certain medical conditions where
Mhm.
their body's not able to utilize it, all these other different things. So anyway, um, so lifetime natural, all that type of stuff. Um, Factor in the drugs now.
Yeah.
So that's going to take some lives off the shelf.
Mhm.
And then let's talk about personal sacrifice. You're not missing training. You
Mhm.
can't miss your meals. You can't go out and drink with your friends. You can't go out to, the barbecue joint down the street. Maybe
Mhm.
occasionally you have like a cheat meal or something like that, but you can't do all this indulgent stuff. Most of these guys that are serious about it, they're either 9 o'clock at night or whatever your version is. Some of them might work
Yeah.
a little late. Whatever their version of like 9 at night is, they're laying
Mhm.
in the bed playing on their phone or a video game or watching TV, anime, or something like
Mhm.
that, and they're going to bed. They're sleeping, anywhere
Yeah.
between 7 to 9 hours. And so a lot of people don't understand that. And so that's something that I learned, because I've trained some guys. Now, you were talking about earlier training bodybuilders. I do not coach bodybuilders. Okay.
Mhm.
And what I mean by that is I am not doing any meal plans,
Right.
supplements. I'm not telling him anything about, trust me, I know plenty enough about steroids, performance enhancing drugs.
Mhm.
I do not advocate the use of those. Number one, all my certifications get pulled if I start saying that shit. Number one. Number two, that is a personal choice.
Right.
And I'm well versed enough to understand the compounds, what they're used for,
Mhm.
how they're used, and things like that. But I am nowhere near well versed enough to tell you what you should take, how much you should take, when you should take it.
Yeah.
Oh, you should use the 23 gauge instead of this, or you should use this or that or this.
You're not planning cycles out for people.
No, no, I don't. I have had guys that I've trained, they say, I want to start taking some gear. I can still train you.
Right.
And we can still talk about nutrition and things like that. Because as you know, in most states, unless you're a registered dietitian, you're not telling people what to eat. That's
Right.
kind of a taboo. Um, and so you can give like general guidance and stuff like that. But
Mhm.
I've had some guys that have gotten on gear. I had a guy that jumped on, it wasn't that much. I think it was like 250, 300 tests a week.
Okay.
And then it was like, and then he was on like, I don't even want to speak out of turn. He might have been on some like anyway, I don't even want to say it because I'm always paranoid somebody's going to hear it and be like, I'm going to try that. So I don't even want to say it. But anyway,
Mm.
it was on a pretty low, relatively low dose,
Okay.
and I trained him for another 9 months, and uh, I would estimate that he put on maybe 5 or 6 pounds
Hmm.
of muscle. I mean, he gained more weight, right?
Right.
But I would say roughly 5 or 6 pounds, which is still really great.
Hmm.
5 or 6 pounds of muscle in 8 or 9 months, and you've been lifting for 8 or 9 years. Even if you're on, that's great
That's pretty
progress.
impressive.
But there's also some guys that'll jump on and put on 20 pounds in 6 months.
Right.
Everybody responds differently. So I don't get into that realm because I just don't know enough about that space. I've never competed. But I do understand training. I understand programming. You want to get bigger, I'll get you bigger. You want to get stronger, I'll get you stronger. And we'll do it the correct way. But when it starts coming to supplementation, illegal supplementation, and things like that, I don't actually train them or coach them as far as that goes. But I have coached a couple guys who have gone on to step on stage and just, local stuff or, some NPC stuff, a couple natural federations. But so, yeah, I always like to throw that disclaimer out there because I have had a couple people reach out to me like, hey, man, I heard you're coaching. And I'm like,
like, not that.
I train you, right? And I'll train. You know what? So this is actually what most people do because I don't actually charge that much, especially, here's my shameless plug, military spouses and military and first responder affiliates and immediate family get ridiculous discounts if they hire me for a multitude of reasons. But I have several competitors that I train in the off season because the coaches they use, it's, $300-400 a month.
Right.
Whereas I charge a fraction of that and we're just doing the training. And they're competitors. They know how to eat in the off season. They know how to eat more food.
Yeah.
Right. So what happens is in the off season, for 6-7 months, I'll train them and we'll work on some of the problem areas. And then when it comes time for competitions, they go to a bodybuilding coach.
Right.
And they're doing the meals and the this and the that and the this and the that. So yeah, I mean, I do train people like that. So I always like to throw that out there because I don't want to misrepresent myself.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely have I think what I was talking about earlier is like you've got a very broad spectrum that you've worked with.
I have, yeah, I do. I have somebody right now that's she's talking to me. I think she's had some like a back surgery. So it's one of those things where she's like, I can't lift heavy, but I still want to get stronger. And I'm like, we can work around that. Like, that's not a problem. So we'll do some like time under tension stuff, some controlled eccentrics, and you don't have to lift that heavy, to gain some progress. Of course, you can't guarantee the type of progress, but there's ways to train without having to lift heavy.
Right.
And there's different movements we can do to alleviate the stress on the back. And so stuff like that. And my biggest thing that I do is that I train you according to your lifestyle. So let's say you come to me and you say, hey, this is what I want to do and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, okay, well, we're going to have about a 30-minute phone conversation, 30, 45 minutes. 1 to 10, what would you say your stress level is? What kind of stress are you dealing with? How long do you sleep? Do you sleep through the night? Do you engage in stressful activities? Like, do you do first-person shooter video games where you're always like, and there's no relaxing. That's not a relaxing. Right. Your blood pressure's up, your heart rate's up. If you're sitting on the couch playing a video game and your heart rate's jumping between 80 and 90, and you're otherwise, pretty healthy individual, that's stress.
Yeah.
Right. So I ask all these questions. How do you eat? What kind of diet? Do you have any medical issues? Any past injuries that I need to know about? Do you have any movements that you hate? Anything that you like? You know what I mean? I ask all these questions, and then based on that, we try to figure out if we can match that goal to how you live. Because if you come to me and you say, well, I can only train for 3 total hours a week, I mean, I doubt you're going to be winning any bodybuilding shows, buddy.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we can definitely put some mass on you, but I doubt that if that's all the time you have in competition season, that's not even enough for your cardio. Right. So That's what I always try to do. So there's my plug. That's what I try to do because I understand people like you and I who have had a past experiences, our stress and anxiety levels are pretty high. Our
Mhm.
recovery rates are not the same as your average Joe walking around, whatever average means.
Right.
And so I think it's important for people to understand that you may want this result, but what is available for you to put into
Mhm.
it might not equate necessarily to that. You want to be 10% body fat, but you like to go drink beer with your friends on the weekends. I mean,
Mhm.
is it doable? For a lot of people, it really
Yeah.
is, but you're going to be pretty hungry on the weekends because most of your calories are going to be coming from that alcohol, and
Yeah.
your your recovery is going to be terrible.
Hmm.
Especially if you're like binge drinking all the time on the weekends and stuff. Your recovery is going to be terrible. Your strength is not going to increase the way you want. You can still make progress, dude. I've set PRs hungover,
Hmm.
so and I mean good PRs. I benched. I did a 315 decline bench the other day, and I was like mildly hungover because we had it was like a birthday thing the night before.
The whiskey and deadlifts is a thing, okay?
Well, and so here's an interesting thing, and this is more this might be something that interests you, and I hate it's taken us this long to get to it, but I have a theory, and I'm no scientist, but I do understand certain things. People like me, and quite possibly you, I don't know if you deal with any sort of stress and anxiety above the what people would consider average, but for me, anxiety and stress and things like that are, I would definitely say, are higher than a lot of people. It's not like crippling. I'm not like
Hmm.
holed up in my house afraid to go out, but there's, if I get into a big crowd or something like that and it gets really loud, I start to, I get tense and,
Hmm.
I don't like that kind of stuff. So what I noticed was, and I'm not a big drinker these days, but what I noticed is that when I do drink occasional, maybe one night a week, and I have maybe three or four like Michelob Ultra light, low alcohol beers, just enough to kind of get to that,
Hmm.
that space. I've noticed that my progress as far as strength and recovery goes up, which seems so counterintuitive because we know that alcohol is not great for muscle building.
Yeah.
What I'm curious about, and it could also be a placebo effect, but is that because it's so hard for me to relax and people
Hmm.
like me, that having that little bit of alcohol allows you to relax finally,
Hmm.
that because you're so elevated, it actually brings you a little bit closer to that normal baseline for a little
Hmm.
while, allowing you to relax rather than someone who's already there. And
Right.
then the alcohol would drop it sort of beyond that. I mean, for example, have you ever watched the Ronnie Coleman
I
documentary?
was just about to bring up the Ronnie Coleman
When
documentary.
when Kevin was like, he's like, man, that vodka pretty good, man. That vodka pretty good. I said, go, come on, big
Uh,
dog, go on and eat a little piece of this pizza, a little
yeah.
vodka. And Kevin, what he said, and this is true, the alcohol allowed him to relax.
Yep.
The carbohydrates pumped him up
Hmm.
because he relaxed. Because when you stress, what happens?
You hang on to
Water.
everything. Yeah.
And here's another thing. What happens when you get like I have anxiety when I'm really stressed out?
Hmm.
I have to pee all the time because I'm so
Yeah.
amped up and everything's running overtime. So if he relaxed, it allowed that water to leave the system. And I
Yeah.
wonder if there really is something to that. And then at that point, maybe Ronnie was able to, he realized that he's as good, he's good enough and
Hmm.
blah, 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 blah. But Ronnie Coleman's also the freaking genetic anomaly. He's just ridiculous. But
He's from Bastrop,
um,
Louisiana, too.
I love Ronnie is, I definitely enjoy Ronnie Coleman. I mean, that guy is in pain every day of his life and he's still in the gym every morning.
You know what I love about Ronnie Coleman? He's got a great attitude about life.
I mean, he just, I love that thing in the documentary. He's like, man, y'all sick of chicken? Because we're sick of pizza. Y'all want to trade,
Yeah.
And I think that Ronnie is, what's his name? I can't remember the British guy that was sort of the sports writer kind of guy. I can't remember his name. You know what I'm talking about? Um, was it Peter? Um, I can't remember his name. Anyway, where he was like, people think because of Ronnie's southern drawl that he's
Mhm.
not intelligent. and it's not. He's smart as a whip.
Yeah.
I think Ronnie is. I'm pretty confident Ronnie's a lot smarter than people give him credit for.
He's got a degree in
And
accounting.
yeah, I mean, there's that, but I mean, I knew a guy that had a master's degree and he's in prison. So I mean, I don't want to.
I'm just saying, like,
I don't.
he's real, like, he's book smart, but he's a smart dude.
Yeah, I mean, and Ronnie, yeah, and I think he's all right, but anyway, going back to the alcohol, I think there is something to that, and I don't think the answer is drinking every night. I don't think that's it, because I think there is a point of diminishing returns on that. But I think maybe every now and then, at least for me, and I'm not advocating people drinking alcohol and everything like that, but in Western society, alcohol is so bastardized. And just like anything, I mean, look, man, you can die from having too much of a vitamin.
Yeah.
You know, so I think, understanding that and having everything, and everybody talks about moderation, and I think everybody's moderation is different. If you're someone who is extremely active, let's say you're like a marathon runner, dude, you can probably put down alcohol better than most other people.
Yeah.
As far as that goes. But I think that it's important for people to look at the bigger picture. So somebody posted something today about breast cancer and how alcohol increases the risk of breast cancer. Now, what's funny is I looked at another research study that showed that alcohol does not increase the risk of breast cancer in people who have already had it before. And I'm like, well, how does that work?
Yeah.
So if they've never had breast cancer, then it increases the woman's risk of breast cancer. But if they've already had it and maybe it's in remission, or if they're still currently dealing with it, alcohol won't make it worse or won't make it come back.
That seems pretty contradictory to me.
And it's really interesting. And I know medicine, and so I know there's, sometimes things look a certain way, and then later on we find out and we go, I get it now. But this is one of those things, like, encouraging people to kind of think outside the box. I'm not saying to distrust anyone, but you have to look at everything sort of from that bird's eye view.
Right.
You have to look at everything together. So, people talk about volume is the driver of hypertrophy. Is volume the driver of hypertrophy, or is it maximally effective reps the driver of hypertrophy? Because if your max bench press is 315 and I have you do 10 sets of 12 with 135, you ain't really going to grow, bro.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But you did a lot of volume.
That's a good deload week.
So here's the thing. Even then, most of the deloads that I have people do is anywhere between 50 to 70%. But depending upon the person. But the funny thing is that, people say that, and that's like the largely believed thing. I've had people grow better doing 3 movements per session for maybe 3 sets. So total of 9 working sets in a session, than doing 21 working sets. Because if you're doing 21 working sets in a session on one muscle group, fucking junk volume. Okay. Lift heavier.
Yeah.
Push yourself more in those other sets, unless you have some sort of like contraindication of, like, or whatever the verbiage is, right? Where it's like, maybe you have a compromised immune system, so you don't want to push too much muscle damage or something like that, and you're trying to drive another thing. But I tell people, look at everything works differently for different folks. So, and as far as this fitness stuff, man, I can go on forever, and I could give a whole seminar on this shit. I just finished a course from Christian Thibodeau about hypertrophy, and some really good stuff is in there. Was talking about different populations, high stress, this, that, and the other. What works best? Muscle damage, mTOR, so looking at all that stuff together.
No, I do. I love this stuff. So whenever we were in Arkansas, my powerlifting coach, like, him and we'd finish working out for the day, because we trained out of his garage where he opened up his gym, and we would sit around for the next 30, 45 minutes after we were done working out, and we would just talk about theory, about different training theories and different philosophies, and like, okay, well, I've read this, like we'd bounce ideas off of each other. So
And it doesn't work for everybody.
Exactly.
I've had people respond to the conjugate system like a weed. And then I've had other people that were like a little bit of improvement. And I think a lot of it just depends on the person and stuff like that. Because I've met plenty of people that got a lot out of conjugate, but I've also met several people that didn't really get much out of the conjugate system. And when I train conjugate, I try to keep it as close to the sort of the West Side method as I can. I do a DE upper lower, ME upper lower, and doing my box squats, my speed squats, all that stuff, and varying heights of the box squat depending upon, you know what I mean? Never doing the same height and all that stuff. Or, and then like, for like speed bench, I do like, 3 close, 3 mid, 3 wide, and I'm doing different groups and everything. And I definitely saw some improvement on that for myself. But now what I've been doing has shown the most improvement. I do, because of my back, I have to be very careful for how much I do. So what I do is I have a push day, and I do 4 movements that day. So right now I'm doing flat bench, even though I hate it. But I still do it because it's a weakness, and you try to attack your weaknesses. So right now, like I'm doing flat bench, and then I do a like a landmine press.
Okay. Yeah.
So I'm doing, like an upper chest, delts kind of thing. And then I'll do a seated dumbbell press for shoulders. And then I'll do like front lateral raise combos. So, front out 1, front out 2, and I'll do those. And then that's it. I'm done. And then I'll do a push day, or I do a pull day, which was today. And I really have like 3 real movements. So I'll do like today, I did like mixed grip weighted pull-ups, and then I did 1-arm dumbbell rows, and then I did some like lat pull-ins. And then I did 1 burnout set of regular pull-ups, and then I trained calves. And then I have another push day where it's more shoulders focused. It starts with the shoulders. So I'll do like a standing overhead press. And then I'll do upright rows, barbell with a barbell. And then I'll do weighted dips. And then I'll do some flies, either on the bench or whatever. And then that's it for that day. And then my last day is like a push leg day or a pull leg day combo. And so I start with legs, and I'll do front squats, and then I do goblet squats, and then I do like 2 back movements. And I usually, either some sort of like landmine close grip row or chest supported dumbbell rows on the bench. And then I'll do like, some other back movement, maybe some like, wide flies, rear flies, something like that. And then that's it. I'm done. And so people look at that and they're like, dude, that volume is so, like, it's not really that much volume. But what I'm doing is I'm training my push and pull twice a week. Legs, I'm only training once a week. But like I said, I'm still recovering from this back injury that I re-injured for the 3rd time recently this year. So I try to work within the confines of what my lower back can handle right now.
Right.
And I've seen tremendous progress with that. So I've done the really high volume stuff. And, I'm sure it helped at some point somewhere. But now I've noticed that the older I get, the stronger I get, the less I do, the better I get. So maybe that would have worked when I was starting out better, because when you first start out, you're just going in there and just annihilating yourself and then going home.
Right. Well,
you don't know what you're doing.
You're also spending more time recovering now too, though.
Yeah. And that's the thing. So the emphasis on recovery, I lift, 4 days a week, and the session can last anywhere between an hour and a half. It depends on what I'm doing. Right. So if I'm doing like heavy stuff, I'm resting, 5 minutes in between a set, because I want to lift that weight for the max number of reps. I want to get stronger.
Right.
So I'm going for strength. Because here's the thing, a byproduct of strength, if you're eating properly, is muscle. It's a byproduct. A byproduct of the volume can be strength gains, but not to the level of training for strength.
Right.
And I'm at the point now where I don't want to be that much bigger. The bigger you are, the quicker you die. We kind of know that. Um, and so I found what works for me, and I've also found that it works for a majority of the people as they age too, as they get up into their 30s and 40s and 50s. Less is more.
Yeah.
Focus on quality, lift that heavy shit, and get the fuck out. You don't need to be in there, messing around doing all that stuff. So, and those are the courses that I take, is all the theory, strength training theory and stuff like that. And the people I take the courses from are way smarter than me.
Oh yeah.
Christian Thibodeau trains, world-class athletes, Canadian Olympic athletes, and he's trained world-class bodybuilders and powerlifters and weightlifters. And so people like that, I'm like, yeah, they offer a course. It's only like $170, man. Go get it. You get a little certificate. It counts for CEUs for my other stuff.
There you go.
It was funny. I had to, I have to recertify with my training certificates, my certifications every 2 years.
Yep.
And so you have to do some CEUs every 2 years. And it's usually about 20 hours. It's like, you got to have like 20 CEUs is essentially what it is. But the way they do it, it's like, you have to have 2.0 CEUs. I'm like, what does that even mean?
Right.
But I took,
it's like, what?
So I took that course. I took the course, and it gives credit through the NSCA.
Okay.
And as you know, a lot of people don't know. So I'll tell you, most strength and conditioning certifications, to actually be like an honest to goodness, this is why I said this earlier, strength and conditioning coach, one of the prerequisites is that you have a college degree.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize that. So if you try to go to like NSCA or whatever the national strength and conditioning is, so yeah, whatever the NSCA, I'm pretty sure it's that one, and a bunch of other ones. If you try to get one of their certifications, it's like, yeah, we need to see your college diploma.
Right.
Before you can even take that course. And so that gives CEUs to those organizations. So when I go back to mine, they're like, well, we don't even know what that is. So I actually have to pay them an application fee for them to review the curriculum to make sure that they'll give me the CEUs. So, and I don't have any issues. I mean, NASM, all of them, they're usually pretty good. They're pretty good about it. So I can't really gripe too much about it. But once you get into that realm where it's like, I'm in the realm of learning from people who teach, strength coaches at colleges.
Right.
And I'm just some dude who's training people, like.
Well, so have you ever heard of Summer Strong?
What?
Have you ever heard of Summer Strong?
No.
Are you familiar with Sornex exercise equipment?
Yeah, I know Sornex. Yeah.
Okay, so Bert hosts a thing every summer up at Sornex headquarters called Summer Strong, and it's basically a 2-day seminar with some of the best and brightest minds in strength sports.
So they just had Swiss recently.
Yeah, I wish
Swiss recently.
I wish I would have gone to that, because that would have been awesome.
One of the coaches here, if I'm not mistaken, he went to it. One of the guys here, I can't remember, his Instagram name is DDT Method, I think. And I've had a couple back and forths with him, and very knowledgeable, very much not into, he's very educated on the topics. He doesn't like to speak on things that he just heard from somebody else.
Right.
He seems like he really only likes to speak to the things that he's researched and experienced firsthand. Because a lot of people just regurgitate shit. Oh man, you got to pre-exhaust it, and I'm like, what are you doing? Yeah, you got to pre-exhaust it. I'm like, if you exhaust your pecs, then when you go to bench, your triceps and shoulders are going to take most of it.
So you're not doing one of those 50 rep warm-ups before you start working out?
Well, so then that's what I think. So like, I will use pre-exhaust methods on it, and it depends on what you're talking about. Because some of these guys will do like, yeah, I'm doing pre-exhaust, and then they're like, yeah, good pump and all that stuff. If you're doing it for, I don't like saying, I don't call it pre-exhaust. It's a pre-activation. So if you have a problem, you have a lagging body part, You do really light stuff to feel that. So you now have a good mind muscle connection. And while that's still fresh, you immediately use it in a compound movement. So you're feeling the triceps, you're feeling the pecs move, you're feeling the delts, whatever it is. I understand that. Or let's say my triceps dominate my bench. I cannot grow my pecs as well as I want to because my triceps are so overpowering. So you just go and burn out your triceps.
Right.
And then you do the bench, because then your triceps are so weak. What happens? Shoulders and pecs are taking a lot more of the work. So I guess it depends on how you're using it, but different things like that. Yeah. I mean, there's a bunch of different tools to add in the toolbox, but then you start talking about, if you're burning out your triceps, okay, what are you doing? Are you going for strength? Because some of the best benches in the world come from some of the best triceps in the world. So what do you, yes, your pecs of course are involved, but I tell people all the time, most people, if you look at most average people when they bench press, where's their sticking point? It's not here.
It's not off the chest. It's that lockout.
It's right here. It's right here. They get to right here, and it's like, oh, I got it. No, I don't. It's right here. Well, what's right here?
It's all triceps. Triceps to lock it out.
Delts, triceps, right? So, I mean, and it just depends. Some people, have some people with longer arms are generally going to be a lot more pec dominant, right? Because it's just way out here.
Yeah. You
got shorter arms, you're in closer, so you're doing more of a bench like that. So it just depends. I'm just fucked. I got fucked up shoulder, so I'm just lifting it however I can at this point. But
lift however you can for as long as you can.
I mean, these days I try to do better technique, but yeah, when I was young, I mean, trust me, like I said, that when I benched that 298 when I was like 161 pounds, that's probably the ugliest. I'm glad nobody recorded it because even though it's a great feat of strength, that was probably the ugliest bench. I didn't see it. And it was probably the ugliest bench press I've ever done, confirmed by the fact that the guy was like, that bench was ugly as shit. Because like by the time I came up, like my right arm was basically like this.
Jeez.
Like it was basically against my body, and it was just tricep and shoulder.
Gave you a thumbs up like this. He wasn't all the way here. He was
he was like, this is 3.
Yeah.
This is 3 lights. This is 1. This is it. Yeah, this is like 2.
Yeah.
You're not white lights. You're getting 2 white lights, motherfucker. You're getting 1 red because
two whites is still a good lift.
Yeah. It's so fun. It's so funny, man, with judging too, because I know you've judged. You ever look at a lift and you see it, and even a lot of times, if somebody's recording a lift, if they're worth their salt, if they're recording you lifting, they're going to record it at an angle.
Yeah.
So they can see sort of a symmetry in the front, but you can also see depth. You can see everything. You ever look at some of these lifts and you look at it and it looks like some sort of a textbook lift? Like you can see the fat on their ass spilling out because it's making contact. Their back's clearly on the bench because they're not, doing a sit up with it. And you look up and there's a red light. And I'm like, what did you see? What did you see? Because I know now with the elbows got to hit parallel for a lot of because I know the IPF does it now, right? Where the elbows got to get.
Yeah, the USAPL they said that you have to, because they got tired of the people with the giant arches and the not coming down super far. But so I was judging a meet one time, and there was this one girl that was lifting. She was kind of like a locally famous for powerlifting. Well, her butt kept coming off the bench for her first one, and I'm talking to the point where I could see the other judge. I was a side judge, and so I red lighted her. Butt came off the bench, not allowed in USPA. Second attempt, same thing. And the meet director came to me. He's a buddy of mine. The meet director comes, dude, what are you seeing? I said, the other judge. He was like, is that bad?
The other judge.
Yeah. Because he knew exactly what I was referring to. So he comes up and he's like, it's that bad? I said, clear as day. And so he went back and he was like, look, my judge said he can see underneath your butt to the other judge. I believe him. And he took up for me. She fixed it on the 3rd rep.
Yeah, we talk about that stuff all the time. You know, we talk about like gym lifts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I, I don't. I tell people all the time, man. You know, if it's the first time you're going with the weight, you know, let's say it's your first time you want to bench 315. Which here's the thing, that's why I love the decline bench. It
Mm-hmm.
alleviates pressure on the shoulders, and you can't cheat.
Yeah.
You can't pick your ass up. You're glued to the. You can't
Yep.
get up.
Yeah.
It's it. You're stuck. So there's no leg drive. You
Right.
can, when you come down, you can get a bit of a body drive, but
Mm.
it's not real. It
Not
maybe
much.
it helps, what, 5 pounds, maybe 5 to 5,
Mm.
but you can't get that leg drive. You
Right.
can't do it. It's more. You have to be a lot more strict with it. And plus, I feel it. I feel it so much more in my chest than I do on a
Mm-hmm.
regular bench. Because I mean, you're going with the grain of the pec, right?
Right.
You're going with the fibers rather than coming up this way.
Mm.
But I tell you all the time, like if it's your first time handling that weight, like let's say, like I knew a guy, he hit 275. What a lot of people don't talk about it. 275 is a great benchmark for
Yeah.
anybody. That's that like middle point between that 3 plate,
Mm-hmm.
thing. And his butt came up a little bit, but it was one of those where it's like it was just like a little bit of like a,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean? And I'm like, dude, it's a gym lift. You
Yeah.
got it. You can bench 275. It's fine.
Yeah.
For some reason, people on social media, I get it. If you're like fucking turning into a decline bench, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
okay, yeah, nice decline bench, bud. You know what I mean?
Right.
But I, I think too many people are just haters. Like there was a
Mm-hmm.
kid on social media and he was benching 315 and he kind of lagged on one side and he kind of picked, he just kind of twisted a little bit to
Mm-hmm.
kind of help get him past that. And then whoop, and then he was able to get it. And somebody's like, oh, your right shoulder came up. And I was like, dude, go actually shit in your hand. You know what I mean? And then clap, because he's not in a fucking, competition.
Right.
He's hit that. He's confident. He knows he can do it now.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee you, ask him to hit 315 in 3 months, he'll be able to do it fine.
Yeah. No problem.
You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think people are too critical, and I tell people all the time, they're like, oh, perfect form, perfect form. Have you ever seen a max attempt? Not always pretty, buddy.
No.
You ever seen some of the world class bench presses? Elbows are wobbling, shoulders are rocking. I
Well,
mean, things
look,
happen.
look at CT Fletcher. That man will tell you that the reason his arms got so big was because he did cheat reps.
The thing is that people understand, like, it's called strength training, not strength testing,
Right.
right? Because you can't just max out every session, man.
Mm-hmm.
Which is a mistake most of us made when we were, I want to see if I got
All
stronger. And it works when
all
you're
of
a
all of
newbie,
us
but
all of us made that mistake when we were younger.
yeah. So, and I know I do it to an extent. I'm like, I'm feeling good today. I'm going to go for a
Mhm.
1 rep max. And then I fail miserably and I hate life for like the next week. Cause I'm like, that was so stupid. Cause now I can't take that attempt for at least another few weeks. I'm going to have to
Right.
work back up to it. So, um, I think there comes a point where people have to understand, because here's the thing, man, the online fitness community as a whole is toxic as shit.
It is.
It's just toxic as shit. And there's so much hate, there's so much misinformation, and it's, I hate it, because look, I'm at a point where I am considered in the advanced realm,
Mhm.
right? I'm an advanced lifter. At under 190 pounds, I squatted over 400, so that's more than double my body weight. I haven't done like 180, 185 a year and a half ago. I deadlifted 450 conventional. And I felt like I probably had another 10, 20 pounds in there. I don't deadlift anymore.
Mhm.
Lower back, I know how to deadlift properly, blah, 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 blah. Well, guess what, motherfucker? I'm not a competitor, and I'm not trying to cosplay on the internet as a professional athlete, because I'm not. So I just did it just because, and I got it. And I was like, cool, that's cool. I also did a 200-pound log press, and I'd never log pressed before.
Nice.
So, just doing stuff like that. But like, I'm at a realm now where, I can bench right about 3, a little over 3.
Mhm.
My squat was over. I'll probably never squat that much again in my life. I'm kind of done with that. That's why I like front squats. It's a lot easier on my back. Feel my quads better too, because
Yeah.
I'm really a forward leaning squatter, so it's all hips and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but I'm at the point now where my lifts are pretty they're in the advanced realm.
Mhm.
And so I don't really get people. The only people that try to call me weak are like, the people with no profile pictures.
Or
You know what I
private
mean?
profile.
They're a private profile, because I'm not weak at all. But especially, you start talking about body weight and everything. I weighed 185.8 pounds this morning. So I consider myself, I would say if somebody's like, are you strong? Pretty decently strong. Yeah.
Mhm.
Stronger than most people, but when you start talking about like strength, no,
Right.
no. There's guys out there that I just watched a guy, uh, I just watched the guy overhead press 405, strict overhead press 405 for like 3 to 5 reps. And I remember commenting on the video and I was like, I don't even know why I've subject myself to your videos. Like it makes me want to just go be a runner or a cyclist or some shit, dude. But people always look at through the lens of other people and everybody, comparison is the thief of joy. And look, I'm here to tell you a 225-pound bench press, if you're under 200 pounds, is a very respectable weight,
Mhm.
period. That means you can lay on your back and push 225 pounds off your chest.
Mhm.
That's a great feat, man.
Yeah.
If you can squat 315 pounds, dude, you are doing jam up. You are doing a fantastic job. If you're into deadlifting, if you can deadlift 350, especially 400, 405, dude, you are a strong individual. And I will die on that hill. So stop comparing. I think people need to stop comparing themselves to the online community because we're only going to post our best stuff. I mean,
Right.
I post some stuff. I posted fucking up my back with 315 on it the other
Mhm.
day
I was say you just
because I
posted the other
decided,
day. Yeah.
yeah, I had to bail on it. I was only going to do like, I think I was aiming for like 5 reps is what I wanted to do.
Mhm.
And I was like, if I can do 5 reps, I'm pretty sure I'll be fine. And 315 for 5 reps is like, it's not, for me and what I'm capable of, it's
Right.
not, I'm not pushing myself, right? Like I'm going to, anytime you look, if you're under 200 pounds, you put 315 pounds on your back, you're exerting yourself
Yeah.
for sure.
It's a good solid
But,
weight.
but, what is it, Ronnie calling it 315 solid ass pounds. Um, uh, but for me, and what I'm capable of, it's not particularly challenging.
Mhm.
And I was like, I can do it. My back was feeling good. First rep, I could feel the pressure in my lower back, but not a pain because, like I said, how I squat and the way my hips are, I really got to get sit back, lean forward
Mhm.
kind of thing. I'm very much like a lever.
Yeah.
And so I kind of felt it and I'm like, that's good. But my ass was back, sitting back really good. I
Mhm.
had my glutes, my hips really far back. And that second rep, that was it. Couldn't do it. And that I was like, this is why I switched to front squats
Mhm.
because number one, it limits the amount of weight. So
Yeah.
it's harder for you to sort of ego lift.
Mhm.
And you're pretty much sitting straight up. And so there's not much pressure on your back
Right.
with the weight being in front of you. Because I think, a couple months ago, maybe 3 months ago or something like that, I front squatted like 316.
Nice.
So I was like, yeah, I'm really happy with that.
Yeah.
Because I thought I was like, I think I can do 275. And 275 was easy. 300 was easy. I was like, fuck it, 316. Hit 316. And I feel like if I would not have done the 300, like if I would have done
Mhm.
275 and then maybe done like 310, I probably could have hit 320 or
Mhm.
325, I think. Which by the way, it was 316 because I have two 15-kilo plates. So that's 33 pounds. But yeah, I think I say all that to say it takes me a while to land the plane sometimes with this ADHD, but I think allowing people to foster an environment, which is what I try to do with my clients,
Mhm.
where it's like bench pressing is uncomfortable for you. Okay, let's work on the form.
Right.
Form looks good. Bench pressing is still uncomfortable. Okay, well let's not flat bench press. How about incline pressing?
Yeah.
Do you like inclining? Okay, we'll do that. How about declining? Well, guess what? The whole pec's covered.
Yeah.
Everything's got. As a matter of fact, decline benching, if you look at a lot of the studies, it activates the upper chest almost as much as a flat bench.
Mm-hmm.
So you can just decline bench if you want. But that's what I'll do. Like, you don't want a flat bench? Fuck it. Let's do incline and decline. And then we'll do some flat dumbbells to, so you get the depth. Because in decline, the reason why decline is considered a little bit easier than a flat is because you're not bringing the bar to here. You're bringing a little bit further down because of you're coming to here. You're not coming to here because you don't want to bench like this. So you're benching here. So you're not as deep. Your elbows are roughly parallel instead of really getting down in there.
Right.
So anyway, there's my sort of rant on people need to mind their own fucking business and quit. Don't worry about it.
Well, and it goes back to what we were saying earlier, like just like how far does kindness go and something like that. Like you could be nice.
Encouraging. There's a way that you can sort of get your point across, like I think the guy that I was talking about with the this guy did, 275 and he's kind of asked was kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, dude, hell yeah, dude. Like, that's fantastic. I was like, work on trying to keep your ass on the bench. And one thing that's going to help you with that is if you bring your feet under you, like the balls of your feet, you're more apt. You have more room to bring your ass up, to arch. But if you put your feet a little bit further out in front of you and put them flat, it's a lot harder. When you do leg drive, you're pushing back instead of your feet being under you. You're actually pushing up. So, and it just depends. Some people, fantastic bench pressers, we've seen them, and there's women that hold these world records, good depth bench presses, where their balls of their feet are up under them. I bench like that. I bench on the balls of my feet. I'll be the first to admit, if it gets weird, that ass is coming off the bench. It happens. Whereas if I do more of a flat foot, it's almost impossible for me to do it. I feel like my feet are going to slide out from under me. So there's a bunch of different ways to skin a cat in this case, the bench press, but because that's the strength standard, right? How much you bench, bro?
Yeah. I don't know. I did some overhead press today. I felt pretty good about that.
You know what I've been doing? Because I actually strict overhead press, like close to 200 earlier in the year or last year. But it's such a strain on my shoulders because when I do an overhead press, dude, I start from my fucking clavicle.
Yeah.
Like the bar is here.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like a front rack position. Like I'm about to fucking, I start from here. I know a lot of guys, they start here, just under the chin, and that's fine. I'm not knocking it, but I start from my fucking clavicle. So what I started doing was like, it's not really a push press because I'm not really squatting down to push it up, but I put a little bit of English on it, and I get more weight out of it. But I realized that I'm still getting the same sensation and the work in my shoulders, in that upper chest area, but my shoulders appreciate it a lot more in the recovery.
Yeah.
So I started instead of just doing strict, I kind of
get a little bump
just get a little bit, just like I tell people all the time, it's leg drive, just like a bench press. And that's just where it's just I let it start in my legs, and that helps keep everything braced. And again, I'm not out here trying to fucking compete.
Right.
So, with that, I think I've done like 205 or 210. I've put overhead. But again, with this shoulder, it's kind of difficult to keep everything locked in. So I do that. I train those movements because I'm not all that great at them. So my expectations are generally pretty low. So if I hit a PR on them, I'm like,
yay,
yay, I hit the fucking PR. But for me, I think for shoulders, my biggest thing, I tell people all the time, if you want bigger shoulders as far as like shoulder caps, like you want to have that 3D sort of like anime round look, dude, that's lateral raising. That's
all day.
That's just a bunch of fucking lateral raises. And if you do a lot of heavy pressing, you'll really get the front delts. But like lateral raises and front raises, I mean, that's because you think about it, when you're doing overhead presses, man, it's your side delts really aren't the prime movers there.
Right.
Your side delts are only the prime movers in doing this.
Yep.
You can do upright rows, but even then, to an extent, now you got traps involved. Now you got, a lot of those other things. So if you want big shoulder caps, do a fucking shit ton of lateral raises. Or how did Roman Fritz put it? Roman, yeah, Roman, yeah, I think Roman. Roman was like, he's like, if you want to have big shoulders, you have to make it hurt. It has to hurt. It has to burn. That's how you get it. It's not about lifting heavy. It's about you have to just. It has to hurt you, and that's true. You just got to be like, and just throwing the weight up there and lowering it. And
Just crying through it.
Yeah, dude, that freaking, oh my god, dude, burning everything up. But anyway, dude, we could sit out here and fucking bullshit for hours.
We could, because this is something I don't have a lot of people I get to talk to about this stuff, so I get going on it and I don't want to stop.
I am, I'm on my own time and it's only 10:30 here, so I normally don't go to bed until about 11:30 anyway, so it doesn't bother me.
Well, I am older than you, so it is my bedtime.
Yeah, okay, yeah, old guy.
Look, you see all the white here in my beard, man. I got
seasons, I have some too, buddy. It's just the down lighting helps me look better.
It's anabolic lighting.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. That, what do they call it? Goon lighting.
Yeah, something like that.
So what we'll do, I think, if you ever want to do it in the future, we can do another one where we can go over, because so here's another thing too. I've been trying to get out free resources to people.
Okay.
Which is, I think you saw in one of the groups I posted. Yep. I'm trying to get a general idea, and some of those guys commenting, I'm like the one guy gives me his life story and history, and I'm like, that's cool. My question was,
right.
I appreciate your response, and I really do, and I value your opinion, but I didn't need the pedigree of your training history. I just wanted to know what you think would be a well-rounded, because I want to put some of these resources, because the thing is, people don't know how to program. Try this workout. Why?
Right.
Why would I try that? What's the progression? What's the progression of this? So what do I do after this? Do I go for reps? Do I shorten rest time? Do I try to increase the weight? Like, what am I doing on this? Try this one. So if that's what you want to do, and that's fine. Some people do different stuff every time, and they enjoy just trying different things and see what they can do. It's not going to be the best way to make progress. Every time you change movements, it's neurologically taxing. I need you to keep that in mind. So if you've been doing a bench press for 4 weeks and then you switch to an overhead press and you haven't done overhead press in a couple months, it's going to be somewhat neurologically taxing because you haven't been doing that for a while. So, well, probably longer than that, but you get my drift. Constantly changing things, there's also another neurological adaptation that has to take place, even if you've done the movement a million reps. So I'm trying to put out some stuff like that and some free resources that people can have, because some people just can't afford to pay. Look, man, as of this interview, my cost for virtual training, virtual coaching, is for without having the discounts for, like, military and spouses and stuff like that. It's only $175 a month.
That's cheap, dude.
But my fucker, $175 doesn't seem like not much to you and I. But what about $175 for the single income E3, E4 home?
No, so whenever I say that's cheap, it's because being involved in this space for as long as I have, I know what other people are charging.
It's pretty cutthroat nowadays, man.
Really?
I mean, so
I guess lately with everything, if people had to,
I'm not gonna say who it is, but a retired, formerly very competitive top IFBB pro was doing bodybuilding coaching as of less than a year ago for like $250 or $275 a month.
Oh, wow.
Bodybuilding prep coaching.
That's pretty cheap.
So who are you going to hire for $275? The dude who kind of looks good in the right lighting, who can who can maybe bench 315 on a good day, or the dude who's been on world-class stages.
Right.
So it's one of those things. It's just like, know your worth, right? And know when you've been beat.
Yeah.
So that's when you have to adjust accordingly. So why should someone, and people can say it's the wrong mindset, whatever, dude. You have to charge what you don't, I know what I'm worth. No, you're worth what the market demands.
Yeah.
And the market demands that I don't charge as much as a fucking former top IFBB pro.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it's pretty cutthroat out here lately. And then you got people that like took the most basic personal training course and they're training people, but
I hear you, man. You can't price yourself outside of getting clients.
Yeah, that's the problem, you know. And again, I enjoy doing it, so it's not that big of a deal. And I, you know, I make, it's fine. So I still make money. So
there you go.
But anyway, all right, man. Yeah.
Well, Toby, I appreciate it, man. This was fun. We'll have to do this again someday and talk more about weight training and programming, etc. Because again, I could sit here and talk about this for a long time. I enjoy it.